All right, all right. Yes, sir. Man, look, bro, listen, bro. It's been a long time, bro. It's been a long time. Salute to Instagram recording my next YouTube video. If you're watching this, what's today? The 8th, I think. I don't know, but last Sunday, if you watch Cutting Through the Culture on my good friend Chad O. Jackson's YouTube channel, you'll notice that I wasn't on the panel last week. And that's because I had work to do, right? And the work that I had to do was this work. I'm very busy during the week, and on weekends is the only time that I have time to do this kind of stuff. And I really needed to get this done. So I had to sit out Cutting Through the Culture so I can do this. And if you're watching this, this is probably a day or two after the Saturday of the 8th that I'm recording this. But that's why I was absent last week, because this topic is of extreme importance to me. And, I just been chilling. Let me, before I get into this information, and y'all, listen, I got a lot. Y'all know if this is your first time coming to my YouTube channel or whatever, I mean, y'all know that I don't do the fluff. I don't do the fluff. I don't do the quick hit reaction shit. And it's probably gonna be, I'm trying to walk better. I'm trying to do better, but it's probably gonna be some 4-letter words getting thrown around today, because I'm not in a particularly good mood. I mean, I'm in a good mood because I'm here. I'm happy to be here, but it's gonna be some fire today. Yeah, it's gonna be some fire today because I've been waiting to get this off my chest for a long time. This is part 4 in the 4-part series that I'm doing, criticizing the ignorance of the Neo-Populist Right. You got something you wanna? There you go. Oh, there you go. All right, better. That's better. Yeah, I do sound better coming through. Appreciate you, producer. So this is the final. Part. I probably could have stretched it into 2 or a couple of more, because I wanted to eventually end with the early 2000s and the war on terror. But I'm not gonna go that far. I'm just gonna end it here, and maybe in the future I'll come back and revisit the issue if the spirit moves me, or if something occurs in the world that makes me want to do this, to come back to this particular topic here. And what we're talking about today, if you read the title on Instagram, it's the birth. This is the birth of Islamo-Communism. You've probably heard the term Islamo-Fascism, but I haven't really heard many people use the term. Honestly, I haven't heard anyone use the term Islamo-Communism, and I'm saying I'm kind of hedging a bit, because I don't want to make it sound as though I invented the term, or this is the first time the world has ever been introduced to the term. I'm not omnipresent, so I don't know. Maybe someone else has said it at some point in time, but I've never heard anyone say it. And so we're going to talk about the birth of Islamo-Communism today. I haven't really been motivated, and this is why it has taken me so long to come back on and make some content and put some videos out. And I don't tell people to follow, like, share, subscribe. I don't do you go to these YouTubers and they give you the whole little script. But yeah, do all that stuff because I think it works. Because I find myself doing it with people. You get those couple YouTubers that you like. You always go to and you know them by name, and so you don't necessarily subscribe, but you like watch their videos. I think even like the stats show, the algorithm shows that most people watch the YouTubers that they like, the YouTubers whose content that they watch. They may not subscribe, but they watch all the time. And I find myself doing that. I watch some YouTubers and I don't subscribe. It's like, whatever, bro. I know who you are. Your stuff pops up. I see it. I watch it. And they be like, please like, subscribe. If you watch it, and I find myself being like, all right, man, damn, you done said it so many times. All right, fine, I'll subscribe. Shit, you done asked me 100 times. And I find myself subscribing simply because they keep saying it. So I think it works. So I don't say that because I'm not really sharp when it comes to this whole YouTube thing. I'm just a guy just speaking into a microphone, man. And let the chips fall where they may. It is what it is, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really, like I always tell guys, I'm not in this to make a living. And so when I come on YouTube, when I make something, when I do something, I'm putting my all into it, and I'm putting my heart into it. And this ain't clickbaity, this ain't fluff, surface level bubblegum stuff. That's just not what I do. Not knocking anybody, not casting aspersions, but that's not what I do. And so I've been kind of sitting back in the cut. I'm gonna tell y'all a quick little brief story, then we're gonna get into this, right? My father died January 15th, right? And so I was given some time off work, right? About a month. My job was pretty gracious. They're like, you can have 20 days worth of bereavement. I said, all right, cool. So I said, I'm gonna take this time, and I'm gonna take this time, and I'm gonna do some personal stuff. I'm gonna do some YouTube stuff. I say, you know what? I drop videos once every couple months, man. I need to get more consistent. People always say, Chuck, your problem is the reason why your subscribers ain't growing because you got to do more content. You got to make reels. You got to do that. Everybody got advice, which it comes from a good place, so I ain't mad. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna drop a couple videos while I'm off. Do y'all know I didn't do jack shit? I just sat around and just relaxed because it's been so long since I had that kind of time to really just chill. And so what gave me the impetus to come back and to try to come back strong was shout out to April Chapman. I don't know if some of y'all know her, follow her. She has a YouTube channel. It's called the Standard of Truth Podcast, right? And so I was chilling one day, like a week ago. I'm scrolling through YouTube and I see her channel pop up and I see she's in a photo with Anton Daniels. Some of y'all know who Anton Daniels is, right? As many of you guys know, I got it tatted on my arm, the old English D, right? I'm from Detroit. And so is Anton Daniels. And April Chapman, I guess, came up here. I think she's from Atlanta or lives in Atlanta. And she interviewed him. And in the caption, it said, something about the weather. And it's so cold up here. But shout out to Anton. He was so gracious. He was so nice. And I had a great time meeting him and sitting down and speaking to him. It's been a long time coming. And I looked at that. And then, and I'm joking, y'all. This is nothing personal. This is not a slight or a dig. See, so either one of them, I actually met Anton Daniels. He's a pretty nice guy. And I was like, no, the heck, April Chapman did not come to my city and didn't check in with me. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking, y'all. And like, truth be told, like I said, this is just jokes. I'm joking, but I'm serious. I'm like, April Chapman ain't obligated to talk to me. She may not even like me. You know what I mean? My content may not be her cup of tea. That's fair. That's fine. No harm, no foul. I'm not taking it personal. But I just said to myself, okay, I gotta get back out here because they must have forgot who I am. They must have forgotten who I am. And so that really is what gave me the impetus. I said, man, I gotta start making content. I gotta start making content. And like I said, I met Anton Daniels. I bumped into him at Somerset Mall out here. If you live in Detroit, you know about Somerset Mall. And like I said, he was just standing in the mall, and he was getting ready to make a video, I believe, because if you know Anton Daniels, he kind of does these random videos where he'll just be walking somewhere public and he'll have the camera and he'll be walking and talking. I think he was about to do a video, and I just say, hey, I said Anton Daniels or something. I think I may have just said Anton. And he looked. He's like, hey, man. And we kicked it for about a couple minutes. And he couldn't have been a nicer guy. I had my kids with me. He spoke to my daughters. And he asked me what my name was. I told him. And I didn't plug. And I said, hey, man, I go by Teacher Chuck on YouTube. Follow me. And, and do you know Chad Jackson? And we're doing a documentary right now. And I didn't plug anything, y'all. People was mad at me. They was like, man, why you ain't say nothing? I was like, I don't know. I'm not that type of person. And, to me, that's like the equivalent of running into a rapper or A&R or an executive or producer somewhere and passing them your demo tape. You know what I mean? Those of you who are old enough to remember cassette tapes and DVDs, that was a way cats tried to get on. They wanted to pass, had to pass out their demo, That's what I felt like that was the equivalent of. I said, man, how many people bump into Anton Daniels in a day and say the exact same thing? I said, I'm gonna just let it be. I'm in my own lane. I'm gonna just do my own thing, and he'll see me when he sees me. But he couldn't have been a nicer guy. Even so much so to the point where my kids thought we knew each other. They was like, Dad, that's a friend of yours? I said, I don't know. I know him from YouTube. I never met the guy. So I just said all that to say that it's not personal. But seeing that photograph did spark that in me, and I said, man, I gotta come to YouTube and do something. And also Jordan Peterson. A couple of weeks, maybe like a week or so ago, he uploaded a video to his YouTube channel. And the title of the upload, just to give you an idea of what he was talking about, was Rape Gangs and the Shadow of Multiculturalism. Rape Gangs and the Shadow of Multiculturalism. And I say, okay, let me watch this. And I watched it. And boy, oh boy, Jordan Peterson got me charged. Because seeing the photo of April and Anton, I was like, man, okay. But then watching that video with Jordan Peterson really, really took me over the edge. And in the thumbnail, it said when silence is sin, something like that. All right, so it gives you an idea. So I'm like, all right, time's up. So I get up off the couch and get back to the lab and put a presentation together. And I'm gonna tell you guys, you may wanna, you all probably already do this if you follow me, but get your pad, your pencils, your crayons, your chalk, whatever it is you write with, because it's about to go down today. Y'all know how long and how detailed and information packed my videos are. I'm gonna tell y'all this right now. This is the longest outline I have ever put together. The longest outline I have ever put together. It's always been up here. It's just all about organization and putting it down on paper. And so I've been busting my tail for the past week to get this together because I couldn't bear another week without saying this. And at least I can say it live on Instagram for the people that's here and the people that's listening. So let's go, man. Where did I leave off last time? Right. I left you all with a quote, right? And, a lot of my criticism, I came up with this term and I wasn't quite sure what to call it. I did a live stream sitting in my car on Instagram a couple of years ago, and I called the upload on Instagram. This is before I even had a YouTube channel, I think, and I called it conservative utopianism. Right, it's a very heady kind of, a lot of syllables. It's not personal here. It probably wouldn't understand exactly what it meant, but I knew where I was going with it, and yeah. And so I noticed this problem amongst so-called conservatives. I've been noticing this for years, but in the wake of the October 7th attack on Israel, everything just kind of came to a head. And what I thought was bubbling right below the surface was, in fact, it was actually there. It wasn't just me seeing things. And so this whole thing that I've been doing here, this whole thing that I've been talking about, is I've been talking about the issue of the Jews, as they like to say, and just the state of Israel and the whole. And again, you have to kind of watch, and I implore people, please go back and watch some of the other videos, because it's all one big story. It's one big thing that I'm trying to say here. It's one big a narrative that I'm trying to weave. And so that's what was really prompting this. And I called it Neo-Populism, or these kind of neo-populists, right? And populism as a concept on its face is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing. A lot of people are kind of caught up in this swell of emotion, the swell of information, based largely on the force of the political will and the cult of personality that is Donald Trump. And what that has done is that has brought a lot of people into the world of politics who perhaps weren't even concerned with these kinds of issues prior to 2016 or prior to 2020. And so you have a lot of what I refer to as Johnny come latelys, and I don't say that as a kind of dig, because we are who we are. We're into what we're into, and everybody is sort of needed in this world to some degree, and everybody kind of adds value. And so this kind of stuff doesn't necessarily interest or may not have interested everyone since the time they let's say, for example, were first able to read or comprehend the kinds of stuff that we talk about here. And so it's not a dig, but folks cannot go unchallenged, because the reality is that, and I'm just going to come out and say it, you have a lot of stupid people, a lot of stupid, know-nothing people on the right. And they have this air of superiority about themselves because, well, at least they believe that a man is a woman, and a woman is a woman. And so that kind of gives them this confidence to speak about things that they don't even fully understand. Because, well, to get a full-fledged understanding of things, it takes a lot of work. Sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's tedious. And that's just not the world we live in, unfortunately. And so I've taken time to unpack this whole thing, to make sense of it, because a lot of people are lost, and a lot of people are listening to a lot of stupid, ignorant, but very popular so-called conservative personalities that are just spewing a bunch of nonsense. And we're going to get into it as we move forward, and I will be calling out names today. All right. Now, where do we leave off? Let's get into it, man. I left you all with a passage from the Quran. This is Quran chapter 3, verse 67. Quote, Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian. He was a Muslim, wholly devoted to God, and he certainly was not amongst those who associate others with Allah in his divinity. And I told you all last time, if you watch part 3, that when I picked up on the next one, we were going to talk about the Quran. So right now, we're going to talk about what the Quran teaches. And mind you, I tell you guys all the time, theology is not particularly my wheelhouse. So I will make comments from time to time, but I try my best to stay away from theology. But if you want to talk about the root of the attitudes towards the state of Israel as it pertains to Arab Muslims, you're going to have to talk about the Quran. It's unavoidable. It's unavoidable. Right. And we're going to see what's really at the root of this. Some of y'all already know. Now, I'm just going to hit you all with a bunch of passages from the Quran. Let's go there. Let's go there. This is from the Quran. This is Quran chapter 2, verse 62. It reads, indeed, the believers, Jews, Christians, and Sabians, whoever truly believes in Allah and the last day and does goodwill will have their reward with their Lord, and there will be no fear for them, nor will they grieve. Is that it? Y'all truly believe in Allah in the last days? Jews, Christians. On Allah, right? Let's see where we went here. So let's go to this is about this particular passage. And mind you, I'm no Quranic scholar. I'm no Islamic scholar. I'm just going to read to you exactly word for word what's in the Quran. Make of it what you will, and then you can go in and do this research on your own time if you want to gain a better standing of what is in the Quran. On Allah, this particular passage pertains to Allah removing his covenant from the Jews, or relinquishing his covenant with the Jews. This is in the Quran chapter 2, verses 63 through 66. Reads, and remember, we took a covenant from you and raised the mountain above you, saying, hold firmly to that scripture which we have given you, and observe its teachings, so perhaps you will become mindful of Allah. Yet you turned away afterwards. Had it not been for Allah's grace and mercy upon you, you would have certainly been of the losers. You are already aware of those those of you who broke the Sabbath. We said to them, be disgraced, apes. So we made their fate an example to present and future generations and a lesson to the God-fearing. Be disgraced, apes. On those who breached the Sabbath, Jews, the Quran chapter 7 verse 166 reads, but when they stubbornly persisted in violation, we said to them, be disgraced, apes. Quran chapter 2 verse 87. Indeed, we gave Moses the book and sent after him successive messengers, and we gave Jesus, son of Mary, clear proofs and supported him with the Holy Spirit. Why is it that every time a messenger comes to you, Israelites, with something you do not like, you become arrogant, rejecting some and killing others? Of course, Muslims accuse Jews of killing their prophets. Let's move on. Chapter 2. I got to get through this because I got a lot. Chapter 2, verse 109 reads, many among the people of the book, for those of you who do not know, those are Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The Jews and the Christians are people of the book, but of course, those who are people of the book will be allowed to live on this earth as long as they agree to live in subjugation to Muslims and pay what they refer to as the dhimmi. I talked about this in the last video. Many among the people of the book wish they could turn you believers back to disbelief because of their envy. After the truth has been made clear to them, pardon and bear with them until Allah delivers his decision. Surely Allah is most capable of everything. Chapter 3, verse 31, quote, on the Jews who disbelieve and kill the righteous people. Indeed, those who deny Allah's signs kill the prophets unjustly and kill people who stand up for justice. Give them the good news of a painful punishment. I like this one here. Quran chapter 3, verse 56 reads, as for those who disbelieve, I will subject them to a severe punishment in this life and the hereafter, and they will have no helpers. This life and the hereafter. Here are 3 verses that pertain to the perception by believers in Allah of Jewish wealth and affluence. Chapter 2 verse 79 reads, so woe to those who distort the scripture with their own hands, then say, this is from Allah, seeking a fleeting gain. So woe for what their hands have written, and woe to them for what they have earned. Chapter 3 verse 75. There are among the people of the book who, if entrusted with a stack of gold, will readily return it. Yet there are others, if entrusted with a single coin, will not pay it unless you constantly demand it. This is because they say, we are not accountable for exploiting the Gentiles. And so they attribute lies to Allah knowingly. But I know the Talmud, you see, the Talmud talks about how the Jews are to, how they are to get over on the Gentiles and do X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I know. The Talmud says a lot of things. And I know damn well most of you who use the Talmud as justification for your irrational attitudes towards Jews have never even bothered to fully research it, have even bothered to fully read it, because the goddamn Talmud is over 70 volumes and over 2 million words. But that's fine. That's okay. The Talmud says a lot of things, but the Quran says a lot of things too. But we don't hear about that enough. All we hear about coming out of the mouths of a lot of you filthy ass so-called conservatives who say disgraceful things in the name of Christianity is all about the Jews. But let's see if you agree with this. Quran chapter 3 verse 81. Indeed, Allah has heard those among the Jews who say, Allah is poor, we are rich. We have certainly recorded their slurs and their killing of prophets unjustly. Then we will say, taste the torment of burning. Just as an aside, As it relates to that, the Oxford English Dictionary defined the colloquial usage of the word Jew as one, transitive, to get or try to get the better of a person by charging too much or paying too little, to cheat or to swindle out of something, occasionally to haggle over something. That's what it means to Jew someone. You don't quite hear it now, but that was a common colloquial slur across Europe for centuries, describing the act of cheating or trying to get the better of someone. I know, Chuck, but you got to understand that everybody just ain't saying it just to be saying it. It must be true. Oh, yeah? That's why they saying it? Well, let's unpack it some more then. Chapter 3, verse 110 reads, "You are the best community ever raised for humanity. You encourage good, forbid evil, and believe in Allah. Had the people of the book believed, it would have been better for them. Some of them are faithful, but most are rebellious." How about that, Christian? Is that you? Is that you? Chapter 3, verse 120, "When you believers are touched with good, they grieve." So when the Muslim is touched with good, or non-Muslims, they grieve. But when you are afflicted with evil, they rejoice. That's you. Certainly the Jew. Yet, if you are patient and mindful of Allah, their schemes will not harm you in the least. Surely Allah is fully aware of what they do. Chapter 4, verse 53, do they have control over shares of the kingdom? If so, they would not have given anyone so much as a speck on a date stone. So when the Jews control everything, they give others nothing. Part of chapter 4, verse 46 reads, "Allah has condemned them for their disbelief, so they do not believe except for a few." Chapter 4, verse 160, "We forbade the Jews certain foods that have been lawful to them for their wrongdoing and for hindering many from the way of Allah." Later in chapter 6, verse 146, it reads, "For those who are Jewish, we forbade every animal with undivided hooves and the fat of oxen and sheep, except what is joined to their backs or intestines or mixed with bone. In this way, we rewarded them for their violations, and we are certainly truthful." Now, I like this one. I like this one here. See if y'all like this one. Quran, chapter 4, verse 161, "Taking interest, despite its prohibition, in consuming people's wealth unjustly, we have prepared for the disbelievers amongst them a painful punishment." I like this one too. Quran, chapter 5, verse 18, "The Jews and Christians," listen, Christians, "the Jews and Christians each say, 'We are the children of Allah and his most beloved.' Say, O Prophet, why then does he punish you for your sins? No, you are only humans like others of his own making. He forgives whoever he wills and punishes whoever he wills. To Allah alone belongs the kingdom of heaven and the earth and everything in between, and to him is the final return." Chapter 5, verse 33, "Indeed, the penalty of those who wage war against Allah and his messenger and spread mischief in the land is death, crucifixion, cutting off of their hands and feet on opposite sides, or exile from the land. This penalty is a disgrace for them in this world, and they will suffer a tremendous punishment in the hereafter." Are you noticing the trend? Huh? It's not enough that they be punished in death. They must be punished in this life. Pardon my side of my face Instagram. I got a lot to get through, and I'm going to be reading a lot of comments. Y'all talk amongst yourselves and say whatever you're going to say about me. I know I'm crazy. Chapter 5, verse 51, Quran reads, "O messenger, do not grieve for those who race to disbelief, those who say, 'We believe' with their tongues, but their hearts are in disbelief, nor those amongst the Jews who are eagerly listening to lies, attentive to those who are too arrogant to come to you. They distort the scripture, taking rulings out of context, then say, 'If this is the ruling you get from Muhammad, accept it. If not, Beware. Whoever Allah allows to be deluded, you can never be of any help to them against Allah. It's not Allah's will to purify their hearts. It's not Allah's will to purify. Let me read it again. It's not Allah's will to purify their hearts. For them is disgrace in this world, and they will suffer a tremendous punishment in the hereafter. Let me go back to this particular portion of the scripture here. They distort the scripture, taking rulings out of context. Remember when I read to you what they said about Abraham. Remember, Muhammad was the prophet that came forth to correct the record because the Jew and the Christian had distorted Allah, had distorted the scripture. But Christianity and Judaism are the only two religions in the world that have a holy book in common. That's the Torah and the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, as we Christians like to say. So who's distorting the scriptures? Do you believe, in fact, that Abraham was a Jew? Was a Muslim? Or was he a Jew? Did he become a Jew? What's the line of Christ? Where does Christ come from? Is Christ a Jew? Or is he a Muslim? Who distorts the scriptures? Christians, I'm asking. Who's distorting the scriptures? It's a rhetorical question. Don't worry about it. If you believe in if you share with your Jewish counterparts, if you all have some prophets in common, if you share the same prophets, you believe in the same prophets, who's distorting the scriptures? Chapter 5, verse 51. O believers, take neither Jews nor Christians as guardians. They are guardians of each other. Whoever does so will be counted as one against them. Surely Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. You're a wrongdoing person because you and the Jew are linked, according to the Muslims, because we are guardians of each other. Again, that's Quran chapter 5, verse 51. Talk to me now. Y'all got a lot of shit to say about the Talmud and about this and about that. Well, let's read the goddamn Quran. Because y'all pissing me off. A bunch of cowards. We know what this is. Don't play with me. Quran chapter 5 verse 59 through 60 says, O prophet, O people of the book, do you resent us only because we believe in Allah and what has been revealed to us and what was revealed before? While most of you are rebellious. Say, O prophet, O people of the book, do you resent us? Oh yeah, I accidentally copy pasted it twice. Do you believe in us? Do you believe in Allah and what he has revealed to us and what was revealed before, while most of you are rebellious? I don't know how I ended up writing it twice or typing it, copy pasting it twice. This is Quran chapter 5 verse 63 through 64. Why do their rabbis and scholars not forbid them from saying what is sinful and consuming what is unlawful? Evil indeed is their inaction. That which have been revealed to you, O prophet, from your Lord will only cause many of them to increase in wickedness and disbelief. We have stirred among them their hostility and hatred until the day of judgment. Whenever they kindle the fire of war, Allah puts it out. And they strive to spread corruption in the land, and Allah does not like corrupters. Quran chapter, I ain't done. We just getting warmed up. Allah chapter 5 verse 78. The disbelievers amongst the children of Israel were condemned in the revelations of David, Jesus, and son of Mary. Quran chapter 5 verse 80. You see many of them taking the disbelievers as allies. Truly wicked are their misdeeds, which have earned them Allah's wrath. That's you, Christian. And they will be in everlasting torment. Oh, you Jew-hating Christians. Y'all gonna love this one. Y'all might like this one. Y'all gonna like this one. This is some hope for y'all, right? It's some hope for y'all. This is Quran chapter 5 verse 82 reads, you surely find the most bitter among the believers to be the Jews and the polytheists, talking about Hindus and all that, and the most, or other pagans and what have you, and the most gracious to be those who call themselves Christians. Oh, ain't that nice? Ain't that sweet? Of all the disbelievers, Christians, according to the Quran, you are the most gracious. That is because These are priests and monks among them, and because they are not arrogant. Oh, okay. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, is that what it is? Is that why? Is that what it is? They like you. Quran chapter 7, verse 179 says of unbelievers, indeed, we have destined many jinn and humans for hell. They have, I think jinn is like a spirit, a ghost, a demon or something like that. They have hearts they do not understand with, eyes they do not see with, and ears they do not hear with. They are like cattle. In fact, they are even less guided. Such people are entirely heedless. Quran chapter 8, verse 55. Indeed, the worst of all beings in the sight of Allah are those who persist in disbelief, never to have faith. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I like this one too. Quran chapter 9, verse 30. The Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, while Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. Such are their baseless assertions, only parroting the words of earlier disbelievers. May Allah condemn them. How can they be deluded from the truth? Chapter 59, verses 13 through 14. Indeed, there is more fear in their hearts for you, believers, than for Allah. That is because they are people who do not comprehend. Quran chapter 98, verse 60. Indeed, those who disbelieve from the people of the book and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell to stay forever. They are the worst of all beings. And this is probably my favorite, one of my favorite verses in the whole Quran. I love this one. Chapter 2, verse 191 reads, kill them wherever you come upon them and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. This is the whole core of what this whole conflict is about. Let me start it over again, and we're gonna get into it. Kill them wherever you come upon them and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. For persecution is far worse than killing. So again, they believe that the act of being persecuted, because they see themselves as being persecuted, the prosecutor, the person that is doing the oppressing, they are committing an even worse act than what you would do in response to that persecution by committing an act of murder. The prosecutor is more wicked than the killer, than the murderer. Let me start the scripture over again. We're going to rewind it. Kill them wherever you come upon them and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. For persecution is far worse than killing. And do not fight them at the sacred mosque unless they attack you there. If they do so, then fight them. That is the reward of the disbelievers. Now, I could have went on. This could have went on and on and on and on. And I had to stop. Because all we was going to do was just be reading the Quran. That's all we was going to be doing. But I had to stop. Because I want to get into the geopolitical stuff. Again, go talk to your pastor. Go try to find an imam somewhere and talk to them. And then let's hear them make excuses for it. Let's see what they have to say. Now let's get into it. All right, that was kind of like a warm up. We warm? Y'all warmed up? We warmed up? Am I warmed up? I don't know. Let's see. Let's go on. Now, what has such religious and ideological extremism led to over the past 70 years? From 1948 to 2018. Why did I choose 1948? Well, it was the year after Pakistan was created, of course, right? right. Pakistan come into existence in 1947. Oh, that's right. We don't much care about them, though, do we? Huh? One nation became three. From India to Pakistan to Bangladesh. Bangladesh, I think, was created in 1970, 1971, due to political but mainly religious tensions. Remember, the Muslim minority in Pakistan was raging a jihad against the Hindus of India because they saw the Hindu ruling class as being the kind of handmaidens of British imperialism. That's the short of the story, right? But we don't care that Muslims wanted their own state because they wanted to be separate from India, right? So we ain't talking about Pakistan. We don't care about Pakistan because we know countries come and go all the time. But no, of course, I'm using 1948 because this was the year the Arab-Israeli War begun, when 5 Arab League nations, Egypt, Transjordan, or it was called Transjordan at the time. There's no Transjordan now, just Jordan, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, invaded Palestine on May 15th of that year. We have 70 years worth of population data to support the claims of a Jewish genocide and not an Arab one, Mrs. Farmer. There have been countless pogroms across the Middle East and Africa since 1948. Here are just a few of the numbers. Let's go to a few countries. Let's go to Morocco. Morocco in 1948, there were 260,000 Jews. As of 2018, there were only 2,150. In Libya in 1948, there were 38,000 Jews. Today in Libya, as of 2018 in Libya, there are 0. In Iraq in 1948, there were 136,000 Jews in Iraq. As of 2018, there were less than 10. In Algeria in 1948, there were 140,000 Jews. By 2018, there were less than 50. In Egypt, in Egypt in 1948, there were 75,000 Jews in Egypt. As of 2018, there were only 100. In Yemen in 1948, there were 16,000 Jews in Yemen. As of 2018, there were less than 50. In Tunisia in 1948, there were 150,000 Jews. By 2018, there were only 1,050. In Syria, in 1948, there were 30,000 Jews. As of 2018, there were only 100. In Lebanon in 1948, there were about 5,000 Jews. As of 2018, there were less than 100. And I'm sure that those numbers are far less today. According to UNESCO, as recent as 2019, there were 23 Arab majority countries in the world. And according to Pew Research Center, as of 2024, there are 50 majority Muslim countries in the world. That includes the West Bank and Gaza. How many Jewish majority countries are there in the world? It's not a trick question. So I'm not going to answer it. Y'all know. Hence why we're here. Let's keep it moving. We again cite Pew for a 2010 study surveying opinions of Jews amongst various demographics in other countries, right? Those surveyed in Egypt with an unfavorable opinion of Jews were 95%. Jordanians with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 97%. Lebanese Shia Muslims with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 98%. Lebanese Sunni Muslims with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 98%. Lebanese Christians with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 97%. So-called Palestinians in the West Bank with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 97%. So-called Palestinians with an unfavorable opinion of Jews in Gaza, 97%. How do you say people who live in Turkey? How do you say that? Turks? Yeah, Turks. Turks with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 73%. Indonesians with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 74%. Pakistanis with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 78%. Nigerian Muslims with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 60%. Nigerian Christians with an unfavorable opinion of Jews. This is curious. This is interesting. 28%. But even still, if you had just 28% is extremely high when you think about it. But you got whole countries, my God, 97% of Jordanians, 98%, 95% of Egyptians, 98% of Lebanese, Shia and Sunni Muslims, and they don't like each other, but they agree on one thing. And finally, Israeli Arabs with an unfavorable opinion of Jews, 35%. That's strange. It's rather low. It's lower than their other Arab Muslim counterparts in other countries. Maybe they know something about Jewish people that the other Arab Muslims do not know, right? I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Let's go here. Let's give a little olive branch because I hear y'all now. I hear the grumbling. That's if y'all still here. Some of y'all gone. In 2016, the Italy-based Center for Studies on New Religions declared Christians. This was 2016. I remember when this was huge news. This is an Italian-based group that studies religions. It's called the Center for Studies on New Religions. Declared in 2016, declared Christians the most persecuted religious group in the world. Proclaiming that 90,000 Christians were killed in 2016, which equates to roughly one murder every 6 minutes. Amazingly, this number was down from 105,000 in 2015. The director of the Center for New Religions, Massimo, sorry, my Italian is kind of bad. Massimo Introvigna stated around 70% of the killings occurred in tribal conflicts in Africa, with the high number attributing to Christians refusing to take up weapons for reasons of conscience. The other 30% occurred due to terrorist attacks and government persecution. And we're going to talk about that some more. And of course, I know by now you all have heard about the widely reported story of the 70 beheaded Christians that were found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo on February 15th in the North Kivu province. This is a bit of foreshadowing because I'm going to come back to the DRC. Just be patient. You'll see what I mean when we get there, right? When I was gathering and organizing my notes this night, this was February, and I wrote it down here so I would know exactly when I was typing this out. This was February 25th, 2025. At this exact time, the exact time was 9:50 p.m. At that time, according to, and this is a good website you all can go to, you can check out this website. It's the religionofpeace.com, the religionofpeace.com. There have been, as of that time I just gave you guys that date and time, there have been 46,870 terrorist attacks in over 70 countries since 9/11. Let me say that again. There have been 46,870 terrorist attacks in over 70 countries since 9/11. Stay focused now. Don't stop chasing shiny objects. Stop chasing the laser pointer like some little feline cat jumping around, right? Because I said 9/11 and all of a sudden, y'all kill me. You know, somebody, it's just how easily motherfuckers get distracted with nonsense. Stay focused. It's not about the 9/11 attacks. I hear y'all now talking about how, just shut up and focus. Because no matter how much theorizing you do about hidden hands and conspiracies and so on and so forth, I can tell you what ain't a conspiracy: evil. It's real. There are some things in the world that I don't quite understand. There's some things in the world that we'll never quite understand, right? Yeah, people lie. Yeah, governments keep secrets. But some things aren't a secret. Because if you listen closely enough, people will tell you exactly what they think about you. You just got to listen. According to UNWatch.org, from 2006 to August of 2015, this is the best numbers I can find, according to UNWatch.org, from 2006 to August of 2015, the United Nations issued, get this, check this out. The United Nations issued 62 condemnations toward the state of Israel for human rights abuses, which was more than every country in the entire world combined with just 55. Which means that 53% of the world's human rights violations are caused by Israel alone. Now think about that. I don't give a damn what you think. I don't give a damn what. No government is above reproach. Hell, look at the. Again, let's go to the book. All right. From Saul on down, every Israeli, every Jewish ruler or king or prophet was criticized Who in the hell, where the hell we get this idea that you can't say nothing about Jews because you're going to be punished? You're going to be canceled. Oh, we know who you can't say something about. We know who you can't talk about. Don't play this game with me on all your fake heroics. You know good and goddamn well Israel is not responsible for the majority of the world's human rights abuses. It is absurd. Or Israel, they're corrupt. Name me one goddamn government in the world that ain't corrupt. Our government is corrupt because you got corrupt people all over. There's corrupt people all over the world. But I know it's AIPAC. It's the Jewish lobby, you see. But yet and still, here you are in America with your phone, typing and scrolling, talking shit. You ain't going nowhere. Yeah, the Jews run your government. What you gonna do about it? Nothing. But pull your phone out and talk shit and post a bunch of nonsense about what Israel is doing to somebody. It's a lie from the pit of hell and you know it. You're a liar. 62 condemnations, 55 condemnations combined with countries like North Korea and China and Cuba, Nicaragua, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Angola, Somalia. I can go on down the list. All these bad actors. Russia. Israel the size of my goddamn backyard. You can't make this shit up. I don't even have time to go to the UN. I ain't got time to talk about the history of the UN and where it came from and all that good stuff, because if I did, it'll make sense. The UN is nothing but a vehicle for leftism. Do y'all remember the story of Solomon Taseer? Y'all remember him? Hope I'm saying his last name right. Solomon Taseer. Well, he was the governor of Punjab in Pakistan. He was a member of the Pakistan People's Party. Wink, wink, hint, hint. The Pakistan People's Party. That's a bit of foreshadowing, y'all. Yeah, it's a bit of foreshadowing. The Pakistan People's Party. But yes, Pakistan has a socialist political party. But Taseer was assassinated by his own bodyguard. I just threw this in here just to kind of set the table, you understand? He was assassinated by his own bodyguard for opposing Pakistan's blasphemy law. He said, wait a minute, y'all. I mean, we going a little too far now. You mean to tell me we talking about giving folks the death penalty for offending against Islam and questioning the proud of it? I mean, what do you think we're going a little too far? Man was assassinated by his own bodyguard, who was too a Pakistani Muslim. Also, before we move on, I highly recommend, if you're interested, you follow this person on Instagram. I follow them. Very, very good content. It's called global_jihad_daily_monitor. It's on Instagram. Global Jihad Daily Monitor. And you put the underscore between the word. Global Jihad Daily Monitor. Excellent Instagram page. Excellent. Now, just briefly, what is a hadith or the hadiths? What are these? All right. I'm not an Islamic scholar, but I'm going to try and do my best. Hadiths are believed to be the sayings and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad and are revered by Muslims as a major source of religious law and moral guidance. The word hadith translates roughly into English as report, saying, or tradition. Islamic scholars and scholars in general debate the authenticity of certain hadiths and the notion of the hadith in general. But the sayings and traditions of Muhammad have undoubtedly played a major role in shaping the worldview of countless Islamic adherents. Sometimes you will hear the word sunnah used interchangeably with hadith, although they are not exactly the same. But they can mean or imply the same thing depending upon the context. Again, I didn't feel the need to, again, elaborate because I want to try to move into the geopolitical stuff as quickly as I can. But again, I want to lay the foundation. A good place to go for my non-Muslim folk out there, if you want to read the hadith, would be a website called www, of course, sunnah.com. Sunnah is spelled S-U-N-N-A, S-U-N-N-A-H, Sunnah, sunnah.com. A famous companion of the Prophet Muhammad was said to be a man named Abu Huraira, who narrated over 5,000 hadith. One hadith credited to him claims that the Prophet said to him, quote, "A group of Israelites were lost. Nobody knows what they did, but I did not see them except that they were cursed and changed to rats." And it goes on. Another hadith claims that the Prophet Muhammad said of the Jews that, quote, "They are the ones to whom God is angry with, and the Christians have strayed." Have you strayed? Have you strayed? Christians, have you strayed? I ain't talking to Jews today. I'm talking to all you so-called conservative Christians, MAGA, America first. And why are we helping Israel? Why are we so involved? It's a Masonic conspiracy, you see. Haven't you read the protocols of the elders of Zion? That's what passes for legitimate research, historical accuracy, and scholarship. Unsubstantiated bullshit. God forgive me, I'm going to be on one today. And of course, there is more often, and of course, the most often cited hadith known by most unbelievers, that's people like me. Of course, there are multiple narrations, but here is Huraira's version. Quote, y'all know what hadith I'm about to read, right? Why don't y'all go ahead and start reading it for me? Go ahead, read it. Go ahead and say it. Let's say it together. "The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say," let's say it together, "Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." Y'all heard that before. If you haven't heard it, that just goes to show you don't know what the hell you're talking about, because they say it all the time. They say it all the time. Let me give you some examples of relatively contemporary attitudes held by some Muslims authorities towards Jews. This is Abul Allah Mudaudi. He is the founder of the Pakistani political party Jamaat-e-Islami. Once said that, quote, of non-Muslims, quote, "Non-Muslims have absolutely no right to seize the reins of power in any of God's earth, nor to direct the collective affairs of human beings according to their own misconceived doctrines. If they did, the believers," that's Muslims, "would be under an obligation to do their utmost to dislodge them from political power and to make them live in subservience to the Islamic way of life." Abul Allah Maududi. Sheikh Mohammed Al-Mariki, a Qatari cleric, once said on Qatari TV back on January 9th, 2009, quote, "We do not treat the..." Listen to what I'm about to read. This is Sheikh Mohammed Al-Mariki, said on Qatari TV. "We do not treat the Jews as our enemies because they occupied Palestine or because they occupied precious parts of Arab and Islamic world and the Islamic world. We will treat the Jews as our enemies even if they return Palestine to us because they are infidels. They rejected Allah and his messengers." Occupied Palestine because they parts of the Arab world. Right. Yeah. Ain't that right? You know, that we big on this whole indigenous thing, right? Indigenous people and stolen land, right? Israel came and stole the land from the Palestinians, right? Yeah, that makes sense, right? Judea belonged to the Arabs. Sumeria and Judea belong to Muslims. Right. Arab Muslims come from the Arabian Peninsula, what is today modern day Saudi Arabia and other parts surrounding. They don't come from no goddamn Palestine. The Jews are indigenous to the land. I don't want to have to say that because I don't even think it matters. Like I said before, the land was once under the control of the Turkish Empire. We call them the Ottomans. They lost. You lose your land, you don't get to negotiate the terms of your surrender. I negotiate the terms of your surrender as the victor. I do whatever the fuck I want to do with your land. It belongs to me. And if I want to put Jews there, that's where the hell they're going to be. Deal with it. Judea belongs to Arabs. You got to be kidding me. An Islamic scholar from Egypt, Muhammad Hussein Yaqub. Listen, these ain't my words. Said that same year, just 8 days later, in a televised sermon that, quote, if the Jews left Palestine to us, would we start loving them? Of course not. We will never love them. Absolutely not. The Jews are infidels, not because I said so or because they're killing Muslims, but because Allah said so. We must believe that our fighting with the Jews is eternal and it will not end until the final battle. You must believe that we will fight, defeat, and annihilate them until not a single Jew remains on the face of the earth. As for the Jews, the curse of Allah be upon them. The curse of Allah be upon them, whose ancestors were apes and pigs. You Jews have sown hatred in our hearts, and we have bequeathed it to our children and our grandchildren. Damn it, if that quote wasn't so long, I would read it again. The curse of Allah be upon you. Also, that same day on Al-Rama TV, Egyptian clerics Sheikh Saeed Al-Afani and Sheikh Mohammed Al-Salam went on to state, this is Al-Afani, the Jews are the accursed people who incurred the wrath of Allah. They are the offspring of snakes and vipers, the slayers of our Prophet Muhammad. He goes on, our hatred of them is purely, listen, man, these are not my words. For all of you, well, we got to figure out because see what happened was in 48 and then this and then that. Mind you, I've been laying all this out, man. It's worth talking about. But here y'all go, but see, you don't understand because when the Jews came and then this and then that had happened and see the Arabs, see they got a point. They could see, could see the UN and see. First of all, that's too tedious for y'all to even sift through most of y'all. But they telling you that all that shit is irrelevant. Listen to what this man said. Our hatred of them, he's talking about Jews, is purely on religious grounds and not because of the pure sacred land which was blessed by Allah. Al-Salam, he stated, they were both being interviewed together, let me clarify that it is our duty to hate them as part of our faith. We are obligated to hate them because they are a murderous people and the enemies of all that is good of Islam. Another Egyptian cleric, Sheikh Salama al-Kawi, stated on Al-Rama TV on January 8, 2009, quote, hating the enemies of Allah is very important. We must teach our children, our youngsters, our brothers, and all Muslims to hate the accursed Zionist Jews. Why not? They teach their children to hate us. Our hatred of the Jews is based upon our faith. The Quran tells us to hate them, not love them. Christians, question, is that what your God commands of you? Is that what your Bible demands you to do, to hate? I know, child, it ain't hate, bro. I'm just keeping it real. I'm just speaking facts. Something about this whole thing just stinks to high heaven to me. Some of you, y'all make me sick. This is not the content for you. This is not the page. I'm not the person for you. I don't peddle in that bullshit because, like I said, a lot of y'all, especially a lot of you so-called black conservatives, y'all been y'all been feeding off a diet of Sinetta TV and the House of Consciousness. Y'all got too much irritated genie and Brother Polite and all that bullshit. You still got a lot of that shit in your mind. You're still hung over from all of the shit you was listening to back in the day when you was coming up watching old grainy videos of Bobby Hemmett and Dilbert Blair talk a bunch of nonsense. You still got that hangover in your mind. This is what I noticed with a lot of y'all. More so than perhaps, I mean, this is me anecdotally. I can't prove this. But I don't really see a lot of, folks that have been, that are truly enmeshed and engrossed in this, and they have a genuine understanding of what is going on. Some of y'all y'all just found y'all because in your mind y'all still captivated by this whole race and oppression, and you just gotta find the right one. You gotta find the right people to blame. You have to awaken to the truth of the matter, because there is some secret grand conspiracy going on. You just had it backwards, or you had it wrong. You voted for the wrong political party. It's the Democrats that don't care about black people. The Republicans, yeah, they got their faults, but they ain't that bad. It's the Democrats that did this. It's the Democrats that did that. And so now in your mind, you're saying, so wait a minute, the Democrats that really did that. Well, who's really doing this, that, and the third over here? Well, it must be the Jews that are really doing this, that, and the third over here. You're still looking for something that you're still looking for somebody to blame. You're still talking about things you don't fully understand because you still got this goddamn Hotep hangover. I see it mostly with y'all. I'll be honest. Y'all still got that damn Hotep hangover. Looking for somebody to blame. Something about it just don't sit right with me. And my spirit, something tells me what you're saying, it ain't true what you're saying. It don't make sense what you're saying. And I'm gonna get. It's some more people I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna mention some more names in here, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff on the internet been really, really pissing me off. And there's some people that I kind of like. And lastly, let me give y'all one more quote. Just as recently as February 21st, 2025, at the Islamic Institute of America in Dearborn Heights. It's a stone's throw from where I am right now as I sit here talking to you. It's on a street called Ford Road. If you live in the Detroit metro area, you know what I'm talking about. I used to live in a city right there at the border of Dearborn Heights. One side where I lived, the side I lived, was Redford Township. On the other side was Dearborn Heights. It was divided by this street called Joy Road. You're from my city, you know what I'm talking about. When I moved out of Detroit, moved to the suburbs, finally moved on up like the Jeffersons and them, I moved to Redford Township. I was right next to Dearborn Heights. So I'm right there. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And truth be told me, Dearborn Heights is a great safe. It's great. They go, they smile. Yeah. You'll see you'll see Free Palestine banners outside of buildings, right? You see the Palestinian flag waving all through the joint. I sound like I'm from Philly. You'll see them. Yeah, you'll see that, right? Right there. But see, I'm told so people tell me, like I've been called a neocon. Somebody called me a golem. I'm peddling in neocon talking points, somebody told me. I even mentioned the likes of Victor Davis Hanson, Dr. Thomas Sowell, Douglas Murray. A brilliant mind and a brilliant man in Douglas Murray. These are liars. These are neocons. These folks are saying, what the hell are we talking about? Really? And so I'm afraid to speak truth to power because I won't call out the Jews when I got this kind of shit in my own backyard. So guess what happens when Teach 'em Chuck get a little bit more popular? I may not be able to live around here anymore. You don't have any idea what the hell is going on around me. So to say that I'm scared to speak truth to power because I won't call out the Jews, bullshit. Because ain't none of y'all niggas gonna mourn me when I'm gone. Who gonna mourn me? Talk about what I'm scared to do, what I'm scared to say. While you live some part of the country, you probably ain't never seen a Muslim in your life. I see them all the time. They're pleasant. They're wonderful people. I don't know what's going on in their minds or what's going on in their heart, but they don't walk around. They cool. But politically, the politics of it, you can't deny them. You can't deny what's in their own book. The Islamic Institute of America is this big ass building. You'll see it. Come on to Detroit. I'll take you over there. And I want to and talk all that shit you be talking online. I want you to say that over there. Go walk up to the Islamic Institute of America in Dearborn Heights and say the shit you be saying. All you dummies. All you, by any means, we got to get Trump back in office. And I'm glad Trump is back in office. I voted for Trump. But here we go. Oh my God, Trump, man, he gonna win. He gonna win Michigan. Because the Democrats are losing the Muslim vote. Even the Muslims are starting to wake up. This is what a lot of these stupid ass conservative content creators are putting on their pages, talking about Muslims in Dearborn Heights finally beginning to wake up. They ain't finally beginning to wake up shit. You know the foggiest idea. I live in the Caliphate of Michigan, the Caliphate that is the 12th district in Michigan, which belongs to Rashida Tlaib. I live here. Michigan District 12, represented by Rashida Tlaib. Muslims are waking up. They ain't waking up to shit. This is nonsense. The Islamic Institute of America in Dearborn Heights, Imam Hassan Kaswani, stated that, quote, the martyrdom of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah is fuel for the resistance against tyrannical Israel. You know, the Israel that 62 condemnations? Yeah, that Israel. We are not defeated. Thousands will join the fight and victory will follow. Who is Hassan Kaswani? Well, he's in Iraq. I just want to talk about him briefly, because it's going to shed some light on it. He's an Iraqi-born Shia Islamic scholar and an imam of the Islamic Institute of America. He's an active supporter of Michigan Democrat politicians and often appears at fundraisers for the Islamic Center. He once claimed that ISIS is an arm of Zionism, because, you know, they fight amongst each other. But he has praised the Houthis and said, quote, even though he is a Jew, unquote, once endorsed Bernie Sanders. Kaswani also once proclaimed that, quote, if there were justice in this country, members of Congress who voted for the House Anti-Semitic Awareness Bill would be indicted for treason. They do not represent the American people and are Israel's stooges. On March 2024, guests at an annual fundraiser for the Islamic Institute of America included Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Haman. Back in 2022, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was the guest speaker. Right. But as long as they vote Republican or as long as they don't vote Democrat, we can do something with that, huh? Right. And it's funny too, man. Like I said, with the woke right, or what I call this Neo-Populist right, you know, even with my friend Chad O. Jackson in his documentary putting it out, you know, we always get those occasional comments that, well, you guys aren't willing to say what needs to be said. You all won't address the elephant in the room, you see. You're talking about the civil rights movement. You're talking about communist infiltration. You're talking about MLK. But you refuse to mention the fact that behind MLK was a bunch of Jews. They were all Jews. So what are you telling me? What are you saying to me? I'm just saying, man, they were all Jews. Well, no. I get that part. But what are you saying? You see, there's a difference. You can say something without saying something, and you can say something to say something. What are you saying? It's just worth mentioning. Okay, so where has that gotten us? Yeah, Stanley Levison was Jewish. Where does that get us? What have we learned? Where have we gone from? Have we moved? What do we understand as a result of that? You see what I'm saying? And then when we accuse those who always throw this whole thing of anti-Semitism around, we get upset, we get offended at them because they're too sensitive. Man, what are you talking about, man? Everything isn't anti-Semitic, and everything isn't anti-Semitic. But when it is, it is. Don't gaslight me, bro. I know what the fuck you trying to say. Don't play with me. Just come out and say it. Even myself, I was sitting around, I was biding my time. I was like, man, hold on, bro. Let me see what's going on here. Another guy who I'm cordial with, I don't know him too well. We've been on a couple of panels together. He seems a cool guy. And I watched his video. I like a lot of his content. I was watching this guy's videos way back before he even, I guess, kind of, I guess you can call it blowing up a little bit more. And that's Jericho Green. Jericho Green, he did a show, a live stream about a week ago, maybe. He and some other guy, they're sitting there talking, and you can go watch the videos. It's called, it was something about unmasking Black history and then uncovering this I guess aspects of Black history that doesn't get talked about often. And to be fair, I didn't watch the whole live stream. I was trying to pick points in the live stream to where I could kind of pick up on what was going on and what was being said. And pretty much the entire live stream. And the guy Jericho Green was on the show with was a guy, I forgot his name, but he I don't know if Jericho brought him on for his expertise or whatever. But yeah, the whole like 2 hour long stream, longer than 2 hours if my memory serves me correctly. And the whole stream was about Jews. And I mean, it probably wasn't in any kind of a hateful way or whatever. I'm not accusing. Like I said, I don't know Jericho Green all that well, but if you follow Cutting Through the Culture, you've seen him on the Cutting Through the Culture show, you've seen him on panels. Again, I like his content. I don't have no problem with Jericho Green. Seems to be a great guy. I don't know, but like I said, in instances like that, I wonder what are we talking about? Are you just they were saying something about one of Jefferson Davis's top advisors was a Jewish guy, and it just the whole stream was about how pretty much the real masterminds, the real movers and shakers behind a lot of Black history were Jewish in some way. And again, I mean, knowledge for its own sake is fine, I suppose. But again, it brings me to a more important question, and that is, what are you actually trying to say? Food for thought. Now, let's get into some geopolitics, man. Angel Wings, it'll be up probably by probably tomorrow, the day after, but within a couple of days for sure. Now, let's move on to geopolitics, man. And I'm gonna try to run through this because boy, oh boy, we got a lot. Now, the Axis powers. Let's talk about the Axis powers. Let's talk about some goings on during the 1930s, 1940s. Right, this is World War II. So on October 3rd, 1935, Benito Mussolini invaded Ethiopia in the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. I think the first one was sometime in the 1890s. But Benito Mussolini invades Ethiopia in 1935. At the end of a successful 7-month military campaign, Mussolini merged Italian Somaliland, is what it was called at the time, Eritrea, and Ethiopia into one colonial tri-state entity called the Italian East Africa Company. Right? From this strategic vantage point, Italy began sending Arab language broadcasts into British and French colonies in the Middle East and North Africa, dubbing Mussolini, quote, the friend and protector of Islam. Italy's ally in Nazi Germany were sending broadcasts into the Middle East as well. So Mussolini was the, quote, friend and protector of Islam. That's the moniker he gave himself. Why did Mussolini do this? Why did he say this? Well, we're going to find out. In 1937, German Foreign Minister Konstantin von Neurath, who during the Nuremberg trials was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his war crimes, but that's an aside, he told German diplomats in various Middle Eastern countries that, quote, the formation of a Jewish state or a Jewish-led political structure under a British mandate is not in Germany's interests. Germany, therefore, has an interest in strengthening the Arab world as a counterweight to a possible increase in power for world Jewry. So here you have the Axis powers trying to sort of curry favor with the Arabs, right, in an attempt to overcome or overwhelm the Allied forces, or Great Britain and France in this case. And so it goes on here. The Axis powers and their overture towards Palestinian Arabs were so well received. Get this now. Some of y'all didn't know about this, but I'm going to tell you about it. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. They were the overtures by the Axis powers were so well received that on Muhammad's birthday of May 22nd, 1937, Arab protesters marched through Palestine carrying German and Italian flags and pictures of Hitler and Mussolini. The New York Times reported on this event in its May 23rd, 1937 issue. Printing headline reads, or the headline read, this is May 23rd, 1937, printing with the headline, New York Times reads, all Arabs celebrate Prophet's birthday. Christians join Muslims in Feti, which I think is Arabic for celebration or festival. Unprecedented in Palestine. Hitler and Duce cheered. Hitler and Duce cheered. Of course, everybody knows that Benito Mussolini, that's El Duce. The article read, I'm going to read you an excerpt from the article. This is the 1937 issue of the New York Times. Describing the event, the article read, Palestine Arabs outdid themselves today in celebrating Maulid al-Nabi. That's the day of the Prophet's birthday. I'm sorry, I don't speak Arabic. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Don't mean to offend any Muslims. Don't come for my head. Maulid al-Nabi, the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. Never before have there been such elaborate festivals, decorations, and processions as throughout the country today. The Jewish Telegraph Agency, which is an international news agency that was established in 1917, also reported on May 23, 1937, that, quote, Nazi flags and pictures of Hitler and Mussolini were displayed by many Arab shops in the old city today, in connection with the celebration of Muhammad's birthday. Arab children thronged the teeming section's narrow, winding streets, shouting, "Death to the High Commissioner! Death to the Jews." The British High Commissioner was Sir Arthur Greenfield. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I just wrote it down here. Wochop or Walcop. I don't know if the H is silent, but death to the High Commissioner, death to the Jews. So they're marching. They're celebrating in Palestine, Arabs, the birthday of the Prophet, whilst cheering and Heil Hitlering and carrying pictures of Mussolini and Hitler. You can go online and look it up. You can go online and read it. It's up there in the New York Times archives. If you just search up like say I may ask my boy to put a graphic up there, but I don't want to ask too much of him because he lets me come and use all his equipment for free. It's my good friend. I've been knowing him for over 25 years. But I don't know if you just go, just do some, maybe not Google, maybe try DuckDuckGo. But yeah, if you just type in Arabs celebrate Muhammad's birthday 1937, waving Italian and German flags and showing pictures, it'll come up. You'll find it. You'll find the image. You'll see the whole article. It's right there. Amin al-Husseini, remember Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem? Well, he wrote a letter to Hitler on October 29th congratulating him on the, quote, this is the quote from the letter, the occasion of the great political and military triumphs which the Führer has just achieved through his foresight and great genius. The Arab nation everywhere feels the greatest joy and the deepest gratification on the occasion of these successes. The Arab people confidently expect the result of your final victory. The Arab people confidently expect the result of your final victory will be their independence and complete liberation. They will then be linked to your country by a treaty of friendship and collaboration. Al-Husseini, of course, would move to Germany during World War II, where he met Adolf Hitler, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and Heinrich Himmler to coordinate Nazi Arab policies in the Middle East. Ironically, though, Hitler, in his racist attitudes, he held racist attitudes towards Arabs as well, and he refused to shake the Mufti's hand or eat or drink in his presence. So he wouldn't shake his hand and wouldn't eat or drink in his presence. Nevertheless, Hitler provided al-Husseini a budget of 750,000 Reichsmarks per month to fund jihad in Palestine. And of course, there was Germany's Free Arabian Legion. Y'all can look this up. The Free Arabian Legion was an all-black and all-Muslim voluntary regiment in the Nazi army comprised of men from across the Middle East and Northern Africa. Yes, Germany had an all-black regiment in its army. Had an all-black, all-Muslim regiment in its army. It was called the Free Arabian Legion. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Next point. Also, remember that Mussolini too was a fierce anti-Semite who proudly stated that he hated that his hatred for Jews preceded Adolf Hitler's and vowed to, quote, destroy them all. This we read in Mussolini's own diaries. And, you know, there's all kinds of stories. You just go and read about anti-Semitism and Jewish oppression under Italian fascism in the 1920s and 1930s. Just go and read about it. Again, some stuff I had to leave on the cutting room floor because this is just, it's too long. It's just too long. I was gonna be here all day, and I didn't want to make another part and drag it out because for now I want to set this aside. I want to move on to some other things. I want to move on to talking about some other things. Because I got a lot of information on Marcus Garvey, a lot of information on Tupac Shakur and the Black Panthers. I want to get all that stuff out. And I just got to move on. For now, the state of affairs had become so turbulent in Palestine that Great Britain summoned both Arab and Jewish delegates to what became known as the London Roundtable Conferences of 1939 in February and March, but to no avail. I'm going to tell you why. The Arab delegation refused to even sit in the same room as the Jewish delegation or to even walk through the same doors through which the Jews had passed. This is why they had to have two conferences, because Great Britain couldn't bring them all in the same room because the Arabs wouldn't sit in the same room with them, nor would they even walk through the same threshold that a Jew had passed through. Now, how crazy is that? Maybe it has something to do with the Quran and the whole thing about Jews being unclean. I don't know. But they wouldn't even walk through the same door, let alone sit in the same room. These conferences were held at the famous St. James Palace in London. Now, in response to Arab demands made at the conference, a British government policy document was prepared by Secretary of State for the Colonies, a man named Malcolm MacDonald, and this was published in May 21st of 1939. The paper rejected the idea of partition and suggested the establishment within 10 years of an independent Palestine, with Arabs and Jews sharing in the running of the government. It also concluded that Jewish immigration to Palestine be limited, bringing the Jewish population to around 1/3 of its current total at the time in 1939 in 5 years, after which further immigration would require Arab consent. Listen, I don't know where y'all get this idea that Jews are so powerful and so strong that they go all around the world and they can just come in swanging, you know what I mean, and just can get whatever they want and tell governments what to do and yada, 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 yada. Even if you go back to my part 3, it's called In Defense of a Righteous Cause, in defense of the creation of the State of Israel, you can clearly see, I clearly outline the fact that how Great Britain was double dealing, right? You had Christian Zionists in Britain who had this conviction about themselves for reasons that I talked about already to resettle the Jews to Palestine. You had in the 1800s, right, you began to see the early inclinations of this kind of the sense of the the lack of legitimacy, this kind of lack of moral legitimacy for the political structure that was empire, right? And so you had a lot of these kind of subordinate, if you will, or these kind of colonized territories began vying for the right to self-determination, which led to the great the great revolutions of 1830. Right. And so it's funny how a lot of these, Christians want to talk about, a lot of these conservative Christians are, well, we want a republic, or you want a republic. OK, well, if you want a republic, then you don't want an empire. But you don't understand empire. You don't know what it entails. You don't know what it means, especially if you're serious about this whole wanting to have this kind of society that kind of has the church as its center point. The core of the society is defined by the church, but then establish an empire if you're serious about it. But if you want to live in a republic, guess what? A republic has to be governed by the secular law. That's the way it works. If you want to have a society that works in accordance with your values, or are you just going to repress everybody else? As I mentioned before, politics is the realm of agreement. Religion is not, because religion endures. The sacred endures. That's the way it works. Because everybody's not going to agree with you. That's just the way it is. Some people are going to worship Allah. Some people aren't going to believe Jesus is the Messiah. That's the way it works. Do you want them in your society or you don't? Period. But if you don't want them in your society, what you going to do with them? Well, let's resettle them. Let's relocate them. Nah, they can't do that either. Somebody already over there. Well, what the hell are we going to do? This is why a lot you people talk, and I go back to the great Friedrich von Hayek, the wonderful quote. He was so clairvoyant in what he saw and how. I'm not calling Hayek a prophet, but he saw the writing on the wall, and he issued this warning. And by and large, we did not heed it. He said that socialism had become the heir apparent to the liberal tradition. Yes, a lot of Jews are left wing. Yes, a lot of Jews are Marxists and communists, but not all of them. As a matter of fact, not most of them. It just so happens that a lot of intellectuals are extremely left wing. There is something particular about the intellectual that makes them prone to this kind of thinking in the wake of the Enlightenment. It just so happens that there tends to be a lot of prominent intellectuals who are Jewish, but a lot of intellectuals in general are hardcore left wing. Why? What are we saying about the liberal tradition? What are we saying about intellectuals? What are we saying about the secular tradition that came forth out of the Enlightenment? What are we saying about it? Has it been corrupted? Has it gotten off the rails? Because a lot of Jews bought into this idea of assimilation. They thought they were British, German, Italian, and so on and so forth. Nah, not so fast. Nationalism became all the rage. Well, if nationalism became all the rage, then where do the Jews belong? And then, of course, after World War II, you began to see this reversal in perspective. Now, state sovereignty is no longer a thing to be held up. We need globalism now, because after all, it was intense national chauvinism that led to the First and Second World Wars, particularly the second one. You see. And so again, if you this was a famous quote from the first patriarch of Constantinople. He said to Christians, he said Christians are not serious about their church if they aren't willing to have an empire, because the military is the tool of both the church and the state. Interesting perspective from the first patriarch of Constantinople. You have to understand when he was speaking and why he was saying what he was saying, and I understand that, and I kind of concur. You either want a republic or you want an empire, right? And so back to this. What's the name was saying? What I was saying? Yes. So Germany. So you had Great Britain They were like, well, wait a minute. If we want to, the Muslims are many, the Jews are few. And so if we can pull them away from the Axis powers, that would give us a leg up. That would give us an advantage in our war to essentially protect Europe, protect Europe from German imperialism, protect Europe from the Axis powers, protect Asia from Imperial Japan, and so on and so forth. And so you had this double dealing where you had Great Britain was like, British mandate for Palestine. We want to resettle the Jews. And at the same time, you had British politicians and others within British society were at the same time creating the spirit of Islamic jihad. They were creating the spirit of Islamic resistance. They were double dealing. Because they wanted to do the right thing, but at the same time, they were being Machiavellian because they wanted to win the war. Anyway, I don't have time to unpack all that. Just go back and watch part 3 of this discussion if you want more information on the double dealing and the duplicitous nature of the British at the time. So going back, I don't remember where I left off. So my point was, that's why I got off onto that tangent, because Secretary of State for the Colonies, Malcolm McDonald, is saying that, okay, we'll do you a solid, because the Arabs were so recalcitrant. They were so entrenched and so dogmatic and rigid. They didn't want to negotiate. So the British said, okay, in order to make the Arabs happy, we'll stop the Jews from coming. We'll decrease their population, and to the extent that we allow further immigration to Palestine, we will first ask your permission. It further called for restrictions. It further called for, this is called the McDonald White Paper. For those of you who want to read it, it's called the McDonald White Paper. The McDonald White Paper further called for restrictions on the purchase of land by Jews, and that was indeed enacted in 1940. And the most dastardly of the McDonald Paper, or Malcolm McDonald's his policy suggestions, was apportioning political representation based upon population. This would have rendered null and void the whole idea of a Jewish homeland in the first place, because it would have been the Arabs that would have controlled the government. So essentially, the Jews would not have had their own state had Great Britain went with Malcolm McDonald's plan that was outlined in his white paper. Again, the McDonald White Paper was published May 21st, 1939. Both Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill in 1922 pledged during World War II. No, not 19. I'm sorry. Did I say that was in 1922? Winston Churchill, I put 1922 here as an aside, just to remind people that Winston Churchill, going all the way back to 1922, had always been on the side. Now, I guess it's fair to call Winston Churchill a Zionist, and that dirty word. Both Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill pledged during World War II to make resettlement of world Jewry to Palestine a central feature of the peace negotiation. However, FDR, in his typical duplicitous fashion, shortly before his death in 1945, told Saudi King Ibn Saud that he would, quote, this is a quote of FDR, support no action that would prove hostile to the Arab people. But I know, Chuck, but it's the Zionists, they run everything. All our politicians, all we do is run around kissing Jewish ass. That's what they tell me. Recall the controversy in the summer of 1942 of the landing in New York from Sweden of the SS Drottningholm. The SS Drottningholm. That's spelled Drottningholm. SS Drottningholm. And 3 years before that, you had the landing of the St. Louis in Miami from Germany, both ships carrying exclusively Jews numbering over 1,000. They were fleeing from the Holocaust. FDR turned them back, stating that, or arguing that, the ships posed a threat to national security, because FDR and his State Department was of the belief that the ship was infested with German spies. So you had thousands of Jews that came to the United States, fleeing the Holocaust, fleeing Germany persecution, fleeing the gas chambers, and FDR turned them back. And many of them, according to the official record, many of them were in fact exterminated. You even had there's two important men. I didn't feel the need to go into detail about them. Rabbi Stephen Wise and Abba Hillel Silver. Two famous Jews, two early Zionists. They, fairly. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about Stephen Wise and Abba Hillel Silver. But my point in bringing them up is they were in FDR's ear constantly. You got to help us, man. You gotta help us establish the Jewish state. We gotta settle this region. We gotta get the Jews need their own homeland. We gotta get, and FDR constantly shut them down. Again, this is something for you to look up and research on your own time. Research it on your own time. FDR essentially told Silver and Wise he wanted no part of it because he said pretty much, I don't want them Arab Muslims breathing up my ass. I don't want that. I don't want them problems. It's too much. I don't want it. Let Great Britain deal with it. Great Britain even blocked Jews from leaving German occupied territories. And you can go and look that up too. I didn't feel the need to go into detail because I said some stuff had to be left out because we haven't even gotten to the Soviet Union yet. I'm still on the Axis power, and I know y'all getting bored, so I'm trying to hurry up and speed through this and get y'all out of here. But yeah, great Germany. The reason why a lot of Jews died is because Germany prevented them from leaving. Little known historical fact. In response to the policy suggestions of the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry, commissioned on January 4th, 1946 in Washington, D.C., co-founder and chairman of the Palestine Arab Party, Jamal al-Husseini, told then Prime Minister of Great Britain, Clement Attlee, that, quote, This is Jamal. This is him speaking in response to the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry. This was a committee. This is when the United States, this was after FDR passed away because he didn't like Jews. I'm just calling it like it is. FDR was a Jew hater. And when Harry Truman came in, he said, okay, let's figure this thing. And so that's when the United States officially got involved, if you will, in the conflict. And that's what the whole Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry was all about in Washington, D.C. He brought these delegates in and said, let's try to figure this out. Here was Jamal al-Husseini, chairman of the Palestine Arab Party, said to Clement Attlee, quote, if the British didn't abandon the idea of a Jewish national home altogether and support an Arab state in Palestine, there would be jihad. Go back and watch part 3 of this when I talked about how the violence, how it broke out and how it spread. The Jews ain't do shit to them, man. This is religious. This is ideological. Let's move on. With the British, along with now the U.S., unable to broker a settlement and peace agreement in Palestine, the issue was brought before the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1947. Drafted by the UN Special Committee on Palestine on September 3rd, 1947, the plan for partition at the end of the British mandate was adopted by the UN on January 29th, 1947, passing by a vote of 33 to 13 with 10 countries abstaining. This became known as, of course, the famous UN Resolution 181. Now I'm going to read to you all. This is from the Israeli Declaration or Proclamation of Independence. I don't know why they use proclamation, but whatever, because they had to be different. The Israeli Proclamation of Independence. This was written by committee. Chief among the drafters was Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. And the Proclamation of Independence was finalized on May 14th, 1948. And here's what the proclamation, have you all ever read the Israeli Proclamation of Independence? Have you ever read it? And I'm going to read some of it. I'm going to read some of it to you. In the midst of the wanton aggression, we call upon the Arab and listen, man, just listen to this. In the midst of wanton aggression, we call upon the Arab inhabitants of the state of Israel to return to the ways of peace and play their part in the development of the state with full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its bodies and institutions, provisional or permanent. We offer peace and amity to all neighboring states and their peoples and invite them to cooperate with the independent Jewish nation for the common good of all. The state of Israel is ready to contribute its full share to the peaceful progress and reconstitution of the Middle East. Our call goes out to the Jewish people all over the world to rally to our side in the task of immigration and development, and to stand by us in the great struggle for the fulfillment of the dreams of generations, the redemption of Israel. Oh, but they lied. I mean, those are just words. They're just words. Our Declaration of Independence are just words, motherfucker. What you talking about? The Constitution are just words. You hold them to those words, right? Thou shalt not bear false witness, right? Hope I'm applying that commandment correctly to a situation like this. But after all, it was the Jews. I don't give a damn how you slice it. I don't care what you think about it. They're the ones who brought monotheistic morality into the world. That's just the way it is. It don't mean you owe them something. I don't even think they walk around like you owe them something. So what is this? I didn't make it that way. God wanted it that way. It's all working out according to his plan. I didn't make it up. His chosen people. Y'all don't like that. Y'all don't like the way it sounds, you see. Like I care. I don't know. Maybe it's envy. Do you want to be Jewish deep down inside? Do you secretly envy them? Is that what it is? Maybe it's some of that going on. Or maybe y'all just mad because, again, through the Torah, they brought in certain precepts that went around the world and changed it forever. And now you can't go around doing what the hell you want to do. Is that what it is? The God of the Jews became the God of us all. That's what Christians believe, right? Weren't we grafted onto the promise? Like I said, I don't want to get too theological. But from a philosophical point of view, again, some of you are severely lacking. From my point of view, anyway. So that's the Israeli Declaration of Independence. Let's move on. The Arab world did not take kindly to this development at all, to say the least. Egypt, then Transjordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, and other people from other countries like Saudis, Pakistan, and Yemenis, they all came and joined. All five of these countries, I'll read them off again. Egypt, then Transjordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon invaded Israel the very next day. On May 15th, 1948, them some bitches didn't even wait a whole day. The British mandate expired on May 15th. These SOBs came the next day. Egypt diplomat and Secretary General of the Arab League. You want to talk about the refugee crisis? The fact that, the Palestinians and all this bull crap. Israel ain't even have time to do nothing to nobody. They came the next day. So no, nigga, we ain't finna wait. We on y'all's ass. Soon as the clock strike, here we come. And they came. General Secretary of the Arab League, Abdul Rahman Hassam Hazem. I'm going to say his name again. Abdul Rahman Hassam Hazem. You ever heard his name, Mrs. Farmer? You know who he is? In 1946, stated that, this is a quote, Arab circles proposed to evacuate all Arab women and children from Palestine and send them to the neighboring countries to declare jihad and to consider Palestine a war zone. And it's been a war zone damn near ever since, if not for the efforts of the Israeli military to keep that shit in check. I ain't even trying to hold back my cursing no more. God just gonna have to forgive me. I'm sorry. But it's been a war zone ever since. Jews didn't make it that way. Israeli Jews didn't make it that way. They made it that way. To consider Palestine a war zone. Get out now. Declare jihad. Move out the way or join us or get your ass rolled over. And that's exactly what the Arab Palestinians did once the UN passed its resolution in 1947. Hazam would also declare on the eve of that war, that quote, this is a quote from Mr. Hazam, "This war will be a war of extermination and a momentous massacre which will be spoken of like the Mongol massacres and the Crusades." But what happened, Mr. Hazam? Well, we know what happened. Y'all lost. Womp womp. Egg on your face. You got your ass whipped. 5 nations against 1. You lost. And of course, Israel has been waging this war of self-defense. This war of self-defense. They've been waging this war ever since. This occasion, ladies and gentlemen, of course, as you all know, is known as the Nakba. In Arabic, it means disaster. This was the great disaster. And you know what I started to do? I just didn't have time to do it. I started to cite and quote a bunch of articles, but I didn't do it because there were a lot of Arab newspapers, a lot of Arab radio broadcasts, and so on and so forth that were commenting. I wanted to give some contemporary commentary to give you guys an idea of what the Arab world was saying about what took place at the time, and they were pissed. They were pissed at their own leadership. They say, "You caused this. You did this. You told Arab Palestinians to evacuate and to declare Palestine a war zone. That's what you said. You promised that you would wipe Israel off the face of the map. And we've been wandering around ever since. Egypt won't let us in. Syria won't let us in. Jordan won't let us in. What the fuck we supposed to do? You told us to do this." But I didn't have time to cite all those articles and quote from all those sources and people who were Arabs at the time who were upset with their own leadership, just to give you guys evidence that the Jews did not create this refugee crisis. They didn't. Now, as I close out on World War II and the fascist and Nazi connection to the Palestine controversy, I just wanted to mention 3 things. The Kellogg-Briand Pact, Charles Lindbergh and the America First movement, and the American Peace Mobilization. Just briefly, I'm just going to go off the top of the dome. But because in the interest of time, I omitted these details. But again, I'll just speak off the cuff briefly. So you had the Kellogg-Briand Pact. That was a pact that was spearheaded by French after the First World War. There was this cockamamie plan that they had to have this sort of international treaty that would ban war. They tried to outlaw war, right? This treaty not to go to war. So look into the Kellogg-Briand Pact. The Kellogg-Briand Pact did a great deal in kind of a defanging. It kind of led to this kind of wussification of France and helped aid in the rise of Adolf Hitler. The Kellogg-Briand Pact. Kellogg, just like the cereal, Briand, B-R-I-A-N-D. The Kellogg-Briand Pact. And there's Charles Lindbergh. That's Lindbergh, Lindbergh, Charles Lindbergh, and the America First movement. He was sort of like the figurehead or the leader of the America First movement. This was a movement. Again, I don't know if I want to say if they had liberal or more conservative support back then, but it was the America First movement by and large that led to the United States reluctancy to enter the fray when it came to World War II until Pearl Harbor. Again, don't chase the shiny object, because I know. Again, y'all getting ahead, y'all thinking, because everybody has heard this whole story, this theory that FDR knew what was going to happen. He purposely did it and because he had to change public perception, because FDR wanted to go to war and the American people wouldn't let him, and so he had to. Okay, stay with me. I'm not here to unpack that right now, but what I will say is that it was the America First movement that kind of led to this culture at the time of American isolationism, and we see how that led to a great catastrophe. Because it turns out when you say you want to leave other people alone, it turns out that just because you want to leave them alone don't mean that they're going to leave you alone. And lastly, the American Peace Mobilization. What is the American Peace Mobilization? It was a group comprised of a lot of, activists, a lot of religious figures, right? This kind of had this Christian tinge to it, but these were so-called progressive Christians, or the Christian left by and large, were part of this group called the American Peace Mobilization. What the American Peace Mobilization wanted to do was sort of similar to the America First movement, but the America First movement was kind of like an idea. The American Peace Mobilization was an actual organization. And what they were doing was they was trying to prevent the United States from getting involved, because we saw Hitler. We saw him on the right. We saw what he was doing. And like, no, leave him alone. Don't bother him. Well, what did we find out about the American Peace Mobilization? You all can look this up if you don't believe me. Well, maybe you don't believe the words of your own government, but the American Peace Mobilization was declared a communist front group, which it was. It was a communist front. You're saying to yourself, well, damn, Chuck, what you mean? So you got Hitler. I know the Soviet Union were our allies in World War II. The Soviets and the Germans didn't like each other. So why was that a communist front group to help Hitler? Well, of course, we're going back to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, right? The peace agreement, if you will, between the Soviet Union and Adolf Hitler. Joseph Stalin was using his contacts in the United States to block the United States participation in the war to help his then ally, Adolf Hitler, and his quest to conquer Poland and other things. And so Joseph Stalin was helping Adolf Hitler in the beginning. And he was using, right, the American Communist Party to create this popular front in the American Peace Mobilization to keep America out of the war to help his ally. All this stuff was going on back then. But America first. I don't even know what that means anymore. Because some of y'all, I don't want anything to do with, because you got your head so far up your ass. This is why they always say, you know, when it comes down to this kind of, when it comes down to, and I hear a lot of people say this, it's become sort of like a cliche, but it's true. Because I'm seeing it right now in real time, right? Like Jews are the canary in the coal mine. When you have, you know, we know the left, and we're gonna get into now here the left, because now enter the Soviet Union, but now you have a lot of Jew hatred on the right too. When you have this, when this goes on, that is indicative of a society that is really on the brink of something catastrophic. That is a society that has really lost its scruples, its moral conscience, its moral constitution has corroded. And perhaps it is corroded to the point of no return. But we'll see. I'm not a naysayer. I'm not a doomsday. I don't know. I'm not predicting anything. But the moral confusion surrounding this issue is indicative of a larger problem in America. We have a serious problem. We have a serious problem in the West by and large. So let's enter the Soviet Union. Let's go. Let's go. This is probably why a lot of y'all came here, because y'all hate Jews, because y'all hate communists, right? Because the Marxists are destroying the United States, and it was the Jews that brought Marxism to the United States. And so that's why. That's why, right? So let's talk about it. Let's see what's going on. So a few months into the Arab-Israeli War, on September 10th, 1948, Golda Meir, a lot of y'all know who she is, right? She was Israel's fourth prime minister, its only female prime minister, and the first female head of state in the Middle East. Golda Meir would arrive in Moscow as Israel's first ambassador to the Soviet Union, showing up at the capital's Charol synagogue on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Meir was swarmed by approximately 50,000 Jews. Now you can go online. There's pictures of, there are pictures of this. You can go online and see pictures of Golda Meir, and it's just this. There's a whole. They just swarmed her. Right? Not to they would have killed her, but they came to see her. They were great. They were happy to see her. They came to celebrate her. Well, what effect do you think this have on the Russian authorities? How did they perceive this event? Well, this was after the Russian Jews, prior to her arrival, they were warned to keep their distance from the Israeli delegation, but instead they disobeyed the commands of Stalin's government. So what effect do you think that this had on Stalin? Let me just talk off the cuff briefly, because I didn't write all this down or type all this up. You have to understand that, and go back to my part one. Go back to my first part, Neo-Populism and the Cost of Moral Confusion, where I talk about the Marxist attitudes toward Judaism and Christianity, respectively, right? It's funny how, you can have heretical views as a Christian, and those who believe that they are displaying or have more sincere fidelity to orthodoxy or to canon. They will write off those heretical preachers for being either, not really Christians or not Bible Christians or whatever. And so you look at someone, say like a Jamal Bryant, right? He doesn't represent you if you're a Christian. Jamal Bryant doesn't represent me, right? But somehow, let's just say, for example, I don't know, man, pick your favorite Jew, George Soros. Somehow, he doesn't represent, somehow, George, it's clear. It's safe to assume that he's not observant, right? Or let's look at someone who we know is secular atheist. I don't know. There's a ton of people that you can pick from. I'm trying to think of a person that people would know. You take take an intellectual, say like a Noam Chomsky, right? All of these left-wing Marxist Jews spread across the American academic archipelago. Just pick one, right? They're Jews, nonetheless, because Judaism, or to be Jewish, is this kind of unique thing in this very particular way. And see, you don't have to be traditional. You don't have to be observant. You don't even have to believe in God, and somehow you're still Jewish. But Orthodox Christians, we simply write them off because, well, they ain't true to the gospel. So something is wrong with them, right? But you have to remember that communism is an atheistic doctrine that seeks to subdue all forms of spiritual adherence, no matter what it may be. Just ask the Falun Gong people of China, ask the Buddhists of China, ask the Confucianists of China what communists think about their doctrine. This isn't something that Jews this is another conspiracy theory that I hear, that Jews just want to subdue or subvert white majority, Christian majority countries, and they pollute them and dilute them with their poison, as if Judaism is somehow excluded from this pollution. Now, it doesn't work that way, because communism is a materialist doctrine, right? It's dialectical materialism. It's materialism. Anything that pertains to matters of the spirit is to be subdued. This is not a theological question with respect to Judaism versus Christianity, Christianity versus Islam, and this versus that. This is about the spirit versus the material. Judaism and Christianity are in the same basket with respect to the atheistic precepts of any one Marxist. Doesn't matter who they are, just pick one. So go back to part one, where I talk about Karl Marx and his attitudes towards Christianity and Judaism, when I went over Karl Marx's essay called On the Jewish Question. Joseph Stalin had no respect for Judaism. He despised it. And the fact that the Jews showed up in mass to greet the Israeli ambassador, a light bulb went off in Joseph Stalin's head. And from that point forward, he went on to plan out a purge, another pogrom that would eradicate any presence of Jewish chauvinism, any presence. He wanted to get rid of it. Lev Bronstein, right? One of his one-time compatriot, Leon Trotsky, AKA, right? By then he had been, I think, what year was Trotsky assassinated? I think Trotsky was dead by then, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the year he was assassinated. But he got rid of Trotsky. Trotsky was a Jew. What Stalin was afraid of was, he was afraid that Soviets in Russia proper, and perhaps throughout the Soviet Empire, was going to embrace this sense, this kind of re-embrace of Jewish nationalism. And he wanted no part. He wanted to stamp it out. So light bulb went off in his head, right? Because again, this whole idea of nationhood, remember, communism is international, right? A true Marxist is one who has no homeland. It reminds me of something a famous Hungarian communist by the name of John Pepper. I remember like I was there, but during one of the one of the Comintern conferences back in the 1920s when speaking of the Negroes in America on the Jewish question, right? We know that the Soviet Comintern for a time came up with this idea of creating this this kind of all black Soviet republic in the American South, where you had a lot of communists who were opposed to that idea. They were opposed to kind of making race the central theme of black activism because, again, they didn't want that kind of national, this kind of racial pride, right? They wanted to be something that was more class-based, et cetera, in keeping with Orthodox Marxism. And so John Pepper, as the Hungarian delegate to the Comintern, referred to Marcus Garvey's United Negro Improvement Association as a quote-unquote form of what he called Negro Zionism. This was in the 1920s. This is John Pepper. Hungarian communists called the Black Power, Black Pride movement a form of Negro Zionism. And so as a result of all of this, Stalin would reinstitute a campaign of Jewish suppression because he thought that he had ridded the Soviet Union of all forms of Jewish chauvinism. He was wrong. On August 12, 1952, 13 Jewish intellectuals were executed by firing squad in Moscow's Lubyanka prison after being convicted on accounts of treason and espionage. This mass execution, which would become known as the Night of the Murdered Poets. Look it up. Look it up, Instagram, Night of the Murdered Poets. This was one of Joseph Stalin's final acts of persecution before he died less than a year later. Among the defendants were 5 Yiddish writers who were part of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, the JAC. The organization had been formed during the Holocaust to lobby world Jewry to support the USSR in fighting Nazi Germany. When the war ended, the JAC's mission changed to preserving what remained of Jewish culture in liberated Eastern Europe. When we talk about liberated, we're talking about the Soviet bloc. We're talking about the Iron Curtain. While Stalin initially overlooked the development of the group, he tightened his control of the country after the war. Stalin became concerned that the committee's well-known relationship to Yiddish represented the group's intention to cultivate its own language and culture. You can't do that. Party loyalty. Loyalty to the Communist Party, not loyalty to Judaism. There's a difference. There are some ethnic Jews that are loyal to communism and some that are not. He became convinced and paranoid that the group's loyalty ultimately lay with Israel, Zionism, and the United States, and thus decided to dismantle the group and execute its members. Say some of y'all hate Jews in the name of hating communism while you talk like a communist at the same time. You make it make sense. Karl Marx could have put them damn words in your mouth. Some of that shit that y'all be saying online, claiming to be conservatives, America first. Karl Marx put them damn words in your mouth. You need to check yourself. Johnny come latelys don't know shit, ain't read nothing. On January 13th, 1953, Russian newspapers Pravda and Izvestia announced that 9 doctors, 6 of which were Jewish, had engaged in a secret plot to kill the Soviet leadership. The 9 men were arrested at Stalin's personal instruction. They were tortured in order to obtain false confessions. Beat them. Beat, and beat again, Stalin commanded interrogators. The doctors were also accused of being U.S. and British spies, as well as serving the interests of international Jewry. They were charged with poisoning Andrei Zhdanov. He was the Central Committee secretary who died in 1948, and Alexander Shcherbakov, who died in 1945. He was the head of the main political administration of the Soviet army, and with attempting to murder several marshals of the Soviet army. The rumored party purge and pogrom to follow was upended when Stalin died of a massive stroke on March 5th, 1953. The case was subsequently reopened and the doctors were declared innocent. 2 had died during the course of interrogation. In his secret speech at the 20th Party Congress in February of 1956, Nikita Khrushchev asserted that Stalin had personally ordered the cases to be developed and confessions elicited to prompt a new party purge. He wanted to get rid of the Jews. This incident is known to history as the Doctor's Plot. Look up and read into, when you have time, the Doctor's Plot. Now, meanwhile, in other parts of the Soviet Union, you had a Czech communist leader by the name of Rudolf Slansky. He became the central victim in a November 1952 frame-up job. The trial of Rudolf Slansky grabbed national headlines in communist-controlled Czechoslovakia. Of Jewish descent, Slansky joined the party in 1921. He played a major role in the communist takeover of Czechoslovakia in February of 1948, rising to the role of vice premier. By late September of 1951, he was removed from his post within the party, and by November, he was arrested. Under intense psychological pressure and physical torture, he confessed to being a Zionist agent and engaging in espionage for the West. In February of 1952, he and 13 others were tried. 11 of them, including Slansky, was sentenced to death. Slansky was found guilty of Trotskyite, Titoist, and Zionist activities. Talking about, of course, Leon Trotsky and Titoist. We're talking about Marshal Tito. Some of you know him as Marshal Tito. His real name was Joseph Broz Tito. And Zionist activities. Of course, Tito was a communist himself, but because of a disagreement with Joseph Stalin, he became an enemy of the Soviet Union. Activities in the service of American imperialism. So Slansky was serving Trotskyite, Titoist, and Zionist activities in the service of American imperialism. You hear this? He was publicly hanged at Pankrak Prison on December 3rd, 1952. The Slansky case was later reviewed, and in 1963 he was posthumously absolved of the criminal charges of treason and espionage for which he had been condemned. These was set up. They were framing them because they were Jewish. Must have been one of the elders of the protocols. There are a couple of other important people. Mind you, Rudolf Slansky had been a committed Bolshevik, and they turned on him because he was a Jew. There are a couple of other important peoples and events that helped serve the cause of Soviet propaganda. These two people are a man named, read into these men, Chaim Arlosoroff, and Retzo Katzner. Two totally unrelated people. They don't go together. They're two separate incidents. Arlosoroff died in 1933. Katzner died in 1957. But they were both Jewish. They were both Zionist. They were both assassinated, and they were both accused of being Nazi collaborators. And they were, they've since been vindicated. In many respects, they've become heroes. I don't even have to. They weren't Nazi collaborators. That is a lie. But you couple that. I don't have time to get into Arber's Law and Katzner. You have to do that on your own time. But you couple that with the $822 million reparations pact, as some people call it, between Israel and West Germany, and the Comintern had a story that it could run with. What was that story? Some of y'all see the writing on the wall. Y'all see where I'm going here. The Nazis and the Zionists were in cahoots, and both movements were masterminded by the Jews. This became the popular talking point of the Soviet Union. The Soviets, in perpetuating this lie, could kill two birds with one stone. One, they could further discredit and dismantle their old Nazi rivals. And two, they could purge Soviet life and the party of any fidelity within its ranks to Jewish chauvinism. We'll come back to this. But you had at the time, remember, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, it originated in Russia in the early 1900s. It came out of Russia. At the same time, in France, remember, you had the trial of Alfred Dreyfus. You all know about the Dreyfus affair, right? They tried to set up Alfred Dreyfus and accuse him of being a German agent, right? And accuse him of selling military secrets to the Germans. It turns out that Dreyfus was framed. This was one of the biggest miscarriages of justice the world had ever seen at the time, because the Dreyfus affair was an international controversy. And it turns out that Dreyfus was framed. Again, he was framed because he was Jewish. Now let's talk about Soviet policy during the Third War. Now we're going to move back. We're going to pivot back to the Middle East. After the death of Joseph Stalin in 1953, Egypt rose to become the Soviet Union's most intimate ally in the Near East. Egypt. Not Israel, but Egypt. Gamal Abdel Nasser, you all know who he is. Gamal Abdel Nasser, as a youth, became a revolutionary hell-bent on ousting the presence of British imperialism in Egypt. Nasser later became an army officer where he led a military coup against the Egyptian royal family, ending the reign of King Farouk in 1952. Through shrewd political maneuvering, he then deposed his own military general, Mohammed Naguib, declaring himself prime minister in 1954. Then, finally, in 1956, President Nasser formulated a new Egyptian constitution that made the country a one-party socialist state with him as president. Yes, Egypt became a socialist country under Gamal Nasser. And by and large, that is still the case in Egypt today. Now, before we move on any further, who is Omar Amin? Does anyone know who Omar Amin is? Raise a hand. I gotta keep drinking water because I forgot my dang on chapstick. I feel like I don't want to be up in here looking like Pookie. The crack, man, it's got me. Who is Omar Amin? Well, Omar Amin was born Johann von Leers in Germany on January 25th, 1902, and he died in Cairo, Egypt on March 5th, 1965. Leers was a high-ranking Nazi as a member of the Waffen-SS. Go and look up Johann von Leers. Look at a picture of him. Known for his militant anti-Semitism, he worked as a professor before becoming a top propagandist in Germany's propaganda ministry. Leers also despised Christians, which he regarded as nothing more than a bastardized set of Judaism. Again, it's materialism. They don't have no use for you Christians. They don't have any use for Jews. They'll mow everybody over. After the war, Leers moved to Egypt in 1956, where he was enlisted by the Egyptian government to write anti-Zionist propaganda. So you got Nazis in Egypt. Oh, but don't follow. Stay right here, right here. Don't talk about Project Paperclip. Stay right here. Stay here. Leers served as one of Gamal Nasser's top advisors through his posts with the Egyptian Information Department. Leers, too, would later convert to Islam, changing his name to Omar Amin. So you got a former Nazi was one of President Gamal Nasser's top advisors. Just wanted to talk about Johann von Leers. You look him up on your own time. Now, why is Egypt significant? Why is President Gamal Nasser significant? Well, we're going to talk about the Suez Crisis of 1956. You all familiar with that? Let's talk about it. On July 26, 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Nasser announced a plan to nationalize the Suez Canal Company, which was under British and French control since its construction in 1869. So here you have a socialist and President Gamal Nasser threatening to nationalize private industry in Egypt in order to oust British and French imperialism. That is why, as a side note, that's why Africa still looks the way it does today. And this is why Africa does not receive private investment from people who actually know what to do and how to actually build an economy, because the peoples outside of Africa who can lend them some help refuse to do so because they do not believe that their property rights are going to be respected, because these various African countries went the way of socialism and they are the ones who actually control the economies. They're the ones who actually plunder and steal from their own people. That's as an aside. Britain and France feared that Egypt would commandeer the Suez at the expense of NATO at the expense of NATO's influence in the region. This was also seen as a violation of UN Resolution 95. With the UN unable to reach a new resolution, I don't even think I talked about UN Resolution 95. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what it entailed. I'll put it in here, and I meant to talk about it, but I don't think I put it in here. We'll see. With the UN unable to reach a new resolution, the British and French held secret military consultations with Israel, who regarded Nasser as a threat to its security, resulting in the creation of a joint plan to invade Egypt and overthrow its president. In keeping with these plans, Israeli forces attacked across Egypt's Sinai Peninsula on November 29, 1956, advancing to within 10 miles of the Suez Canal. This was also seen as a test for the Soviets to display how committed they were to expand their influence in the Middle East. With President Nasser's boldness being viewed by the Eastern Bloc as a stand against Western imperialism, the USSR, through its support behind Nasser, becoming a source of propaganda, military personnel, and weaponry. In short, Egypt emerged victorious, with Israel unable to take the Suez, and Nasser became a hero for the cause of anti-imperialism and Arab nationalism. But there was a man who fought in the Egyptian army during the Suez crisis. He's a very consequential man. Who was that man? None other than Yasser Arafat. But don't forget about the Suez, because we're going to come back to the Suez. But let's talk about Yasser Arafat. May I? Now, who was Yasser Arafat? He was born August 24th, somewhere about, we don't know, in 1929 in Cairo, Egypt, and died November 11th, 2004 in Paris, France. He was the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization from 1969 to 2004 and became the president of the Palestinian Authority from 1996 to 2004 and was the co-founder and leader of Fatah. Fatah is the largest organization within the PLO. Do y'all hear the word? Y'all know what the PLO is? We talk about. Anybody know what it is? Does Mrs. Farmer know what the PLO is? I don't know. Maybe go ask her. Does Tucker Cross, does he know? Huh? Ask him. He has to know. I know he knows. Fatah is the largest organization within the PLO. Here are the names of the groups that make up the PLO. Listen to these names. For all of you who always got your Marxist antennas up, listen to these organizations. These are organizations that are part of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's a multi-group coalition. Who belongs to this group? Here they are. Fatah, the Democratic Reform Bloc, and you have the National Democratic Assembly. You have the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. The Palestine Democratic Union. The Palestinian People's Party. Palestine Liberation Front. Palestine Popular Struggle Front. And the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command. Now, if you don't hear it, then you got a lot of work to do. This is a coalition of Marxist, Leninist, revolutionary socialist groups whose ideology is interspersed with Palestinian nationalism, secularism, anti-imperialism, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, and Pan-Arabism. Even the founder of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a man by the name of George Habash, he's a Christian. He's part of this group. But Jesus is king, right? George Habash, that's y'all boy? George Habash, Habash, that's y'all boy. Now, one may ask, how does the Egyptian son of a wealthy merchant, because Yasser Arafat was born into wealth, how does the Egyptian son of a wealthy merchant who attended Cairo University become the head of a Palestinian organization? How does that happen? He's Egyptian. Arafat was turned into a devoted Marxist by KGB foreign intelligence. Did y'all know that? He was reared at a Soviet training school in Baleshka in the 1960s, after which his Egyptian birth records were hidden and subsequently replaced with forgeries alleging that Arafat was born in Jerusalem. It was a lie, thus making him a Palestinian. It was a lie. This is no conspiracy. This is fact. Yasser Arafat, head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, head of the Palestinian Authority, was born in Egypt. Right after the 6-Day War, and we'll get back to the 6-Day War. Yeah, it's going up on YouTube later. Right after the 6-Day War, the Kremlin appointed him chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization at the behest of his fellow Egyptian and Soviet beneficiary, President Gamal Nasser. According to Ion Mihai Pacepa, Ion Mihai Pacepa was a Romanian communist who defected and became an informant for the United States. While still in the Communist Party, he was gathering intelligence for the United States authorities. This is what he said of the Palestinian Liberation Army. This is what he said of Yasser Arafat. Ion Mihai Pacepa. Mihai Pacepa. M-I-H-A-I-P-A-C-E-P-A. Pacepa. The quote: Palestinian Liberation Army was contrived by the KGB, much like the KGB devised the Bolivian National Liberation Army. That's Che Guevara and his boy, or Che Guevara went out there and helped the Bolivian communists. You all know the story, right, of Che Guevara and the Bolivians, right? It created this Arab army in the early 1960s following the failure of the troops of various Arab states to destroy Israel. So they created the Palestinian Liberation Organization because these ragtag bunch of Arab bandits, they couldn't destroy Israel. The Soviet Union got fed up and said, well, let's create the Palestinian Liberation Army to give them some structure. Yuri Andropov, y'all know who Yuri Andropov is, right? If you know, you got to know who he is. Head of the KGB from 1987 to 1982 and was former General Secretary of the USSR. Right, Yuri Andropov, you know, he was boys with old Chappaquiddick Ted, right? The Democrat Party in the 1980s were sending communiques to Yuri Andropov telling him not to cooperate with Ronald Reagan because the Democrats were working on his ouster. That's just off the top of the dome. I didn't write that because we ain't talking about the 1980s here. But Yuri Andropov once told Pacepa, quote, we needed to instill a Nazi-style hatred for the Jews throughout the Islamic world and to turn this weapon of the emotions into a terrorist bloodbath of Israel. That's Yurian Andropov to Mihai Pacepa. Nazi-like hatred. Fuel a Nazi-like hatred within the Arabs to create a bloodbath of Israel. Zohar Mashin, former head of the PLO military department, said back in 1977, 2 years before his death, he died in 1979, Zohar Moshin, Zuyarmuhsin, said back in 1977, quote, listen to this. The Palestinian people do not exist. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for our Arab unity. Only for political and tactical reasons do we speak today about the existence of a Palestinian people, since Arab national interests demand that we posit the existence of a distinct Palestinian people to oppose Zionism. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity exists for tactical reasons. Head of the PLO military department. I don't know, man. It's all too complicated. I don't want to speak about it, bro. I just don't know. I can't make sense of what's going on. They're committing a holocaust. And truth be told, the night before I stayed up, I watched Mrs. Farmer's appearance on the Piers Morgan show a couple of months ago, where she accused Israel of engaging in a Holocaust to exterminate the Palestinians. You a fucking lowlife, Mrs. Farmer. Yes, I'm talking to you. Some of y'all don't like it. Y'all don't like when I talk like this. You gonna walk right off a cliff listening to fools. Because like I said, some of y'all with that Hotep hangover, y'all claim to be traditional men, y'all claim to be conservative men. Nah, motherfucker, you still got your mama's spirit. Listening to this woman tell y'all a bunch of nonsense. It's always these wannabe tough urban, it's always y'all. Because y'all the ones been feeding off a daily diet, a daily dose of this anti-Jewish propaganda. And you still listening to your mama. I don't give a damn who I offend. I've been holding this in too long. Maybe I should have said it a long time ago and I wouldn't be speaking like this. Beginning on July 30th, 1974, Arafat led a delegation of the PLO to Moscow to discuss the current state of geopolitical affairs with his strongest ally. Arafat would also visit Moscow later in that same year, where he attended a ceremony commemorating the life of Vladimir Lenin, where he placed a wreath on his tomb. You don't believe me? You can go online right now and you can find the images of Yasser Arafat at the tomb of Vladimir Lenin, placing the wreath on his tomb. It's right online for you to see it. To further illustrate the point, Arafat would also visit Romanian communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu on more than one occasion. In 1978, during one of his visits to Bucharest, Ceausescu is documented as having remarked to Arafat, quote, "You simply have to keep pretending that you'll break with terrorism and that you'll recognize Israel over and over and over and over. Pretend." And that's the quote, over and over and over. Not my embellishing. Just pretend. The Soviet Union, by and large, taught Arabs how to manipulate, how to lie, how to manipulate media and how to do all that stuff. They taught them. They showed them. And you will eventually win a Nobel Prize. Ceausescu didn't say that. I said that because, of course, Yasser Arafat would eventually win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994. What a joke. Because of his signage, because if he, 93 was the Oslo Accords, earned him the Nobel Peace Prize, the bloodthirsty murderer and terrorist, Yasser Arafat. Can you believe this? No wonder Barack Obama won one. Hell, y'all gave one to Yasser Arafat. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Cuba's role in all of this. Yes, Cuba. From Che Guevara and Gamal Nasser's joint military operation in the Congo in 1965 and Cuba's endorsement of the PLO and Fatah to Cuba sending weapons to Cairo to support the National Liberation Front during the Six-Day War. Castro even sent military personnel to aid in the fighting against Israel during the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Arafat himself also visited Cuba in 1974. Why in the hell are Cubans fighting Israelis in the Yom Kippur War? America, man, why we got these troops everywhere? I wish we would just withdraw. Some of y'all talk all that shit, but y'all not willing to deal with the consequences. What do we do then? What do we do now? What happens after we do that? Are you willing to deal with those consequences? Why does the United States have personnel in different countries and so on and so forth? I hate to break it to y'all. I don't know what fucking world y'all think we live in. I don't know what fantasy land y'all think this is. America got troops in other parts of the world, the same reason why Cuba would send Cubans to Palestine for that same reason. I don't know. What is it that Fidel Castro knew that you didn't know? Every communist-controlled country was in on this plot to eradicate Israel in the name of Western imperialism. Now let's move on to the Six-Day War of 1967. I know y'all bored. I'm trying to get y'all out of here. On May 13th, 1967, Soviet officials informed the Syrian and Egyptian governments that Egypt had amassed troops on Syria's border after numerous attacks by Palestinian guerrillas within Syria's borders. The report was false, so the Soviets lied. But President Nasser, in preparation and due to requests from its Syrian ally, sent large numbers of Egyptian soldiers into the Sinai. For extra aid, Egypt and Syria further solidified their forces by signing a mutual defense deal with Jordan. Right. And keep in mind that Egypt and Syria, remember, Egypt and Syria became one country for a brief period of time. I forgot what it was called. After all the while, the Johnson administration, this is Lyndon B. Johnson, had been pressuring Israel to abandon the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip after the victory or after the conflict with Egypt in 1956. Again, ladies and gentlemen, America does not always support Israel. Look no further than Barack Obama to know that. Look no further than Joe Biden to know that. Look no further than Jimmy Carter to know that. And we'll get to Jimmy Carter shortly. Here's Lyndon B. Johnson telling them, man, just back up. Just back up. Just go back. Give Egypt what they want, essentially, and we can avoid this conflict. Mind you, I'm talking about the Suez Crisis and the war, the 6-Day War of 1967. There's a lot of intrigue, a lot of details, a lot of information I just don't have time to talk about. I'm giving you guys a brief overview of the history of these conflicts and what led to them. Just an extremely brief overview, because you can make an entire book about just one war, right? I mean, come on. Israel, surrounded and fearing an Arab attack was imminent, launched what it felt was a preemptive strike against the 3 Arab states in June of 1965. So once again, Israel is fighting 3 countries at once. Between June 5th and June 10th, Israel defeated Egypt, Jordan, and Syria and claimed control over the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. This victory by Israel led to the passage of UN Resolution 242, demanding Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories under conditions, so long as the as Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and such, so long as they acknowledge each state's right to exist. Essentially, Israel, you have to get out in exchange for a promise on behalf of the Egyptians that they will agree to peace, acknowledge your right to exist, respect your borders, respect your boundaries, and leave you alone. That's why we are where we are today. However, this defeat of Arab forces prompted the 4th Arab League summit starting on August 29, 1967, to devise a plan moving forward. The summit held in the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, during which time the member countries constructed the principle of the 3 no's. The 3 no's. What are the 3 no's? No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. This became known as the Khartoum Resolution. The Khartoum Resolution, that's spelled Khartoum. The Khartoum Resolution. Like I said, get your paper and all that stuff ready. You should be writing stuff down when you have your little conversation with your buddies, with your friends, online, at the barbershop, in the beauty salon, at the gym, wherever you are, wherever you reside. Make sure you got this information on hand, because ain't nobody telling you this. But I ain't gonna say ain't nobody, but you gotta go to the people that know what they're talking about. Not clowns online who just want to be, social media. If I don't know what the hell is motivating these people, but go to real scholars, real historians, not clowns. Although the 6-Day War defeat was a colossal embarrassment for the tripart Arab-Muslim contingent, more importantly, it served as a monumental policy failure for the Soviet Union. So you got to understand, this is 1967. So what else was going on in 1967? What else was going on in 1967? You had the Vietnam War, right? And so the Soviet Union used the 6 Day War or used just the existence of Israel in general as this kind of propaganda cudgel, because unique within the Arab-Israeli conflict are all of the axioms that began to kind of fuel the new left by the late 1960s. You had Vietnam. You had this sense of anti-imperialism, right? This cause of anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. You had apartheid was going on, and there were all sorts of attempts to end apartheid. South Africa. You got racism. You got all of these isms and threats just all around, right? And it's always the West's fault. And the Soviet Union was so embarrassed by the defeat of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in the 6 Day War because they couldn't fathom how they lost. Because again, the Soviet Union viewed the loss of the 6 Day War as they took it personal. They took it personally. They thought, we lost. Egypt didn't. We lost, right? And they began to believe that, well, there are American agents everywhere. Zionism. Zionists are everywhere, perhaps in our own government, in Great Britain and America. And that's the only way that Israel can continue to kick Arab ass like this. So they must be getting help from America. They must be getting help from this. And so they built this large, this conspiratorial mindset at the time in the 1960s. Now, in 1973, a Jewish American communist by the name of Hyman Loomer, his last name is spelled Lumer, Hyman Loomer. He was editor of Jewish Affairs, which was a Communist Party publication, and he was a card-carrying member of CPUSA. That's the Communist Party USA. He published a book in 1973 called Zionism, Its Role in World Politics in Response to the Aftermath of the 6 Day War. In it, Loomer's core thesis was that Zionism and Zionists were the servants of Western imperialism. Before its publication, Loomer in 1971 took a visit to Moscow to study Trotskyism, where he requested, quote, materials for unmasking the Zionist anti-Soviet campaign. Loomer planned to incorporate these materials in a series of articles and pamphlets intended for wide distribution in the United States. These materials became the basis of his 1973 book. And this book, Zionism, Its Role in World Politics, became the standard guideline for the American left's position towards Zionism and the state of Israel to this very day. Now, briefly, let me talk about Anwar Sadat, just briefly. I feel like I'm missing something because I could have sworn I guess I didn't. I thought I put in some excerpts from his book, but I don't think I did. I'm misquoting myself. I didn't. But you can go and get and if you want a copy of Zionism, Its Role in Politics, you may be prepared to spend a couple $100. It's a very rare book. Zionism, it's subtitled Its Role in World Politics by Hyman Loomer. He was a Jewish communist in America who went to the Soviet Union to gather information on how to spread anti-Zionist propaganda in the United States. This book is very hard to find. But you can get it, I think, on Amazon. I think it was marked down recently when I saw it. It was like 70 some bucks. It's normally like $100-$200 for this one book. So if you're interested in reading it, grab it while it's on sale. Now, briefly, let me talk about Anwar Sadat. Just real quick. I didn't want to go into a lot of detail about Anwar, but he was the president of Egypt from 1970 to 1981. Another consequence of Egypt's loss in the 1967 war was its decision to shut off access to the Suez Canal. Right? So Egypt, they said, all right, we lost the war. I tell you what, we're going to shut off the Suez on your ass. Right? Well, after an 8-year blockade, in a gesture of goodwill toward Israel, President Sadat, Gamal Nasser's successor, he was vice president of Egypt under Nasser and assumed control after Nasser's death. Reopened. I think he came after Nasser died. Memory serves me correct. Don't quote me on that. But he was his successor. He reopened the canal after peace talks began with Prime Minister Menachem Begin of Israel. Furthermore, on November 19, 1977, Sadat made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to address the Knesset to further advance the peace negotiations. This process would culminate in the signing of the much controversial Camp David Accords on September 17, 1978. And what did Sadat receive for his troubles, you may ask? Well, remember Solomon Taseer? Remember him? The Pakistani politician? Well, he, like Taseer, he was assassinated on October 6, 1981 by Khalid al-Islamabuli and Muhammad ibn al-Salam Faraj. But 5 men in total conspired in the plot. All were sentenced to death and executed on April 15, 1982. Sadat was assassinated by Islamic jihadis for his violation of the Khartoum Resolution. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiation with Israel. Remember the 3 no's. He was assassinated because he formally recognized Israel. But why did Sadat take this approach? Y'all think Sadat was a moderate? You think Sadat was trying to reform Egypt? He wasn't. He had no choice because the Soviet Union was growing fed up with Egypt and its inability to get the job done. By then, by the late 1970s, the Soviet Union was being led by Leonid Brezhnev. And he said, no, I can't deal with this no more. We keep sending aid, money, and they keep losing. I'm not finna keep dealing with this. Maybe we'll try another tack. Maybe we'll try another approach. Try peace. Talk to them, right? Because this was after the Arab Muslims lost the Yom Kippur War, and the Soviet Union was like, all right, man, listen, let's try this. You even have there are communiques. I started to put them in here, y'all, but like I said, some stuff had to couldn't make it because this is too long as it is. And there are communiques with Brezhnev and one of his advisors, and his advisor says to him, pretty much like, aren't you afraid of what you're going to make the Arabs mad? Aren't you afraid of what the Arabs are going to say? And Brezhnev, in so many words, says they can kiss my ass. He said, I don't care. He said, let them get mad. I don't care. I'm tired. I'm tired of them. So make no mistake about it. And Anwar Sadat was trying to play the long game. He was no friend of Israel, and he was no moderate. How do we know this? Because Sadat wrote a letter to Hitler in 1953. Again, rumors spread. Some of y'all believe these rumors. There are a lot of conspiracy theorists within the Neo-Populist Right who believe that Hitler didn't die in that bunker beside the love of his life. No, he lived. He lived. They smuggled him out, right? He smuggled out through the Vatican, right? This is and the Soviet Union really helped to peddle these conspiracies about the Vatican and their involvement with the Nazi Party, because you see, the Catholic Church had always been an obstacle to the flourishing of communism, particularly in Europe, but the world over for that matter. And so the Soviet Union for the longest time was trying anything that it could to try and discredit and infiltrate and co-opt the Catholic Church. This goes all the way back to the mid 1800s. This was before the publication of the Communist Manifesto. I think it was Pope Leo the Ninth, if I'm not mistaken, wrote an encyclical denouncing communism a decade before the Communist Manifesto was even published. And so the Soviet Union, this is a great bit of communist propaganda that the Catholic Church was helping the Nazis. And I know it's a popular thing. Some of y'all believe that. But again, it just goes to show you how anybody can get caught up in these kinds of weird conspiracy theories. And so people believe that Adolf Hitler was still alive, right? I myself can't confirm nor deny. But in 1953, rumors spread across the Arab world that Hitler was alive somewhere, perhaps in South America. And a newspaper at the time, Anwar Sadat was a colonel in the Egyptian army. He was asked to write a letter to Hitler. If Hitler is alive and he can see this letter, what would you, essentially, what would you say to him? And they were trying to find him. And so Anwar Sadat penned a letter to Adolf Hitler. And here's what he said. My dear Hitler, I admire you from the bottom of my heart. Even if you appear to have been defeated, in reality, you are the victor. you have succeeded in creating dissensions between the old man Churchill and his allies, the sons of Satan. He's talking about Jews, calling them the sons of Satan. Now, after let's move away from Sadat, back to Arafat. After Arafat's death after Arafat's death in 2004, Mahmoud Abbas immediately became the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization and later became president of the Palestinian Authority in 2005. Both posts he still occupies. But unlike his predecessor, Abbas was born in Palestine, now Israel, in 1935 in the town of Safed. He fled with his family to Syria during the 1948 war, right? Remember? Hazim Abdul Rahman Hazam told them to leave, remember? After earning a law degree from the University of Damascus, where he was involved in student activism through the General Union of Palestinian Students, so he was a left-wing student activist. Abbas was recruited by Yasser Arafat to become one of the earliest members of Fatah, during which time Abbas was beckoned to no other place than the Soviet Union, where he attended graduate school at the Patrice Lumumba People's Friendship University of Russia, where he received a Candidate of Sciences, which is the Russian equivalent of a PhD. In an attempt to obscure the link between Palestinian liberation and international Bolshevism, some left-wing sources refer to the Patrice Lumumba Institute as the Institute of Oriental Studies. That's because of course, Patrice Lumumba himself. Remember, I talked about how the Congo would come up. We talked about those 70 beheaded Christians in the Congo, right? It was the Soviet Union that helped turn the Congo into what it became. Because the Belgians, or was it our Belgian people, are they Dutch, right? I think. Anyway, you had, it was a Dutch colony, right? I think the Belgians are Dutch, right? If I'm mistaken, I apologize. But there was a plan to kind of fork over control of the Congo to natives. But there was this kind of contingency plan where they would work in conjunction with the peoples of Belgium to assure a healthy and transition. So that way the natives of the Congo would be prosperous and learn in the ways of the West. But instead, the Congo was turned upside down, thanks solely to Patrice Lumumba and the Soviet puppet masters that put his ass to work. It was so bad that the Congolese natives, reached out to the United Nations and other Western authorities to try to stop this, because Patrice Lumumba and his communist contingent were on a tear, massacring throngs of Congolese natives in the name of trying to turn the Democratic Republic of the Congo into a Soviet satellite. And they, by and large, succeeded. You had a man by the name of Doug Hammarskjöld. You had the famous civil rights activist Ralph Bunche. We're communicating with the peoples of the Congo in an attempt to essentially aid and abet Patrice Lumumba in his attempted communist takeover of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we all know the story. With the aid of the United States, Patrice Lumumba was eventually captured, and we know how that all turned out. But too much damage had already been done, and ever since then, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has been a failed state, another failed communist state, just like every other failed Arab state, just another failed state. Some of the college's other notorious alumni, this is the Institute of Oriental Studies, the Patrice Lumumba Institute. Some of its other notorious alumni include Daniel Ortega and Ali Husseini Khamenei, just to name a couple. You got to understand that all of these activists, these Black and Arab activists in Asia and in Africa, hundreds of them, the same way in which blacks in America, through the African Blood Brotherhood and other factions, There's a gentleman, I forgot, I think Frank Robinson is his name, the man who wrote the book 44 Years in the Soviet Union. You had all these people, Langston Hughes and Hosea Hudson, Homer Smith, Lovett Fort Whiteman. I can go on and on and on. Claude McKay, all of these blacks in the United States that went and received training in the Soviet Union. The same thing happened with Arabs and Africans. They received their training in the Soviet Union, and they took those tactics. There was those Bolshevik. They took Bolshevism into these areas, right, in order to thwart Western imperialism. So back to my notes here. No more off the cuff because I'm almost done, y'all. Abbas earned his doctorate for his thesis titled "The Other Side: The Secret Relations Between Nazism and the Leadership of the Zionist Movement." To this day, the full text of his dissertation is still classified. It's still under lock and key. It still belongs to Russia. They still have it. And from my understanding, you cannot get a hold to this thesis. But we do have certain excerpts from it, and we do have his dissertation's abstract. And I'm going to read from Mahmoud Abbas's abstract, this theory of the relationship between Nazis and Zionists. And I know y'all believe it. Some of y'all believe it, and I'm telling y'all this is where this idea came from. Soviet propaganda, Mahmoud Abbas, head of the PLO. Here we go. Here it reads: with the deepening of the crisis of capitalism, and listen to how he talking, man. This is a fucking communist. This is how he talking. With the deepening of the crisis of capitalism in our time, the crisis of the ideology of Zionism and the inadequacy of its ideological concepts become increasingly obvious. Abbas goes on to warn that Zionism remains, quote, a shrewd and dangerous enemy of socialism and the national liberation movements. What? Abbas's dissertation is rife with Marxist cliches. It further reads, quote, unmasking the reactionary ideology and the politics of Zionism constitutes a pressing task of all progressive anti-imperialist forces and is inextricably connected with the defense of peace, democracy, and social progress. All peoples must fight. As he describes, quote, the hateful ideology and practice of racism, against racial and national discrimination, Zionism, and anti-Semitism, which are fomented by capitalist reactionary forces. Man, Vladimir Lenin couldn't write something like that. Leon Trotsky couldn't write something like that. A man named Vasily Metrokhin. Try to pronounce his last name as best I can. He is a senior archivist at the KGB's Foreign Intelligence Archive, or he was a senior archivist at the KGB's Foreign Intelligence Archive from 1972 to 1984. He defected to the United Kingdom in 1992. Metrokhin was able to smuggle out thousands of highly classified notes from the KGB's Global Intelligence Network. One of the files labeled Envelope K24. Envelope K24 relates to Soviet Near and Middle East foreign policy. In that file, it was discovered that Abbas, codenamed Mole, was in fact a Soviet agent. And these files are now housed at the Churchill Archive Center at Churchill College in Cambridge, England. So we round in. So that's it, y'all. Let me hit y'all with two quotes, and I'm gone. If you're watching this on Instagram Live, it will be up on my YouTube channel, and give it a day or two. I'm sorry, I don't live stream from YouTube because I don't really have a lot of followers over there, and so I like to do it in front of a more professional camera and kind of get it all pre-recorded, mistakes and all. I don't care. So who is Whittaker Chambers? We all know who Whittaker Chambers is. It's funny because the Arab Muslim, or the cause of Arab Muslim liberation, they just whore themselves around to anybody that's willing to be their benefactors. right? In order to receive patronage, anything that is opposed to the West. That's why I tell people, you can debate theology all you want to, all right? But at the end of the day, there's something else at stake here. There's a certain, again, when you're talking Western civilization, I hear so many people throwing this term pagan around. We get a lot of great ideas from great pagan philosophers like Socrates, like Plato. We get our entire political system from the Hellenic period. These very concepts are still with us to this very day. Faith, reason, a world without faith, you get communism, you get totalitarianism. God too gave you the gift of reason. You also should be able to reason and rationalize and work your way through God, through your mind. It's not just about how you feel. Because a world without reason leads to a world of fanaticism. That don't work either. I wish there was this nice way to just package everything up and put it all together. It don't work that way. Human beings, we're destined to suffer. That's just the way it is. I don't know what to tell you, right? But it's funny how anything that is opposed to our long tradition, from the Greeks, from the Romans, to the Jews, yes, the Jews, giving to us monotheistic morality and Hebrew culture, blended, it all kind of mixed together with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and all of this stuff. Anything that seeks to tear that down, to tear down that the citadel, to tear it down, anything that wants to do that, they will find common cause with people who seem not to have anything in common on the surface. But it's about destroying that which is good or destroying that which is preferred. It's the best of a bunch of bad options, but it's what we got. It's what we got to deal with. And so Arab liberation, first they were aligned with the Nazis and the fascists. And then once they fell, then they became like these clients. They became clients of the Soviet Union. Every totalitarian dictatorship out there that's willing to give them money, to give them weaponry, to give them the means by which to wage a war against the unbelievers. Go back to the beginning of this talk when I ran through the Quran. Whatever it takes. Nazis, communists, it don't matter. So when did this start? When did this begin? That's why I call this Islamo-Communism. Y'all heard the term Islamo-Nazism. Y'all know about the connection between Arabs in Germany and the Nazis and the Grand Mufti and all that stuff. We talk about it all the time. We don't talk about this much, though. When did this all begin? When did this all happen? I talked about Golda Meir's visit to Moscow in 1948. I talked about the coup in Egypt that turned Egypt into a socialist state. I even talked about the 6-Day War. So when did the Soviet Union begin this posture towards Arab liberation, this united Arab front after the fall of the Ottoman Empire? When did this originate? Well, who was Whittaker Chambers? You all know who Whittaker Chambers is, right? Probably one of the most, probably the most famous communist defector in American history, right? He helped bring down the Ware sale. Harold Ware was a communist who had reached some of the highest ranks within the FDR State Department. It was Whittaker Chambers and another communist defector, a woman by the name of Elizabeth Bentley, who helped to bring down the Ware sale. We all know who Whittaker Chambers is, right? He exposed Alger Hiss, but he exposed many others too. But of course, Alger Hiss is the name we're most familiar with. But Whittaker Chambers wrote a memoir. The date of it, the year of his original publication, I believe, was 1952. But Whittaker Chambers was a hardcore Bolshevik in the communist underground from about 1925 to I think 1938. Just to give you an idea of when he was a member of the Communist Party. And he wrote a memoir, of course, it's called Witness. We all know about Whittaker Chambers' memoir, Witness. Well, he says something in his memoir, and he talks about it. I'm going to give you a quote from Whittaker Chambers. Again, this was 1952. But remember, he became a communist back in the 1920s. And we know that when you go back to the Neba Musa riots, I talked about the Neba Musa riots in part 3 of this series, right? The revolt, the rebellion of the Arabs began in the early 1920s. So violence was already, the conflict had already begun by the time Whittaker Chambers even entered the Communist Party. But here's an excerpt from his memoir, Witness, and this is what he says. He says, Arab outrages were occurring in Palestine. The Communist International chose that moment to call for the formation of a Soviet Arabistan and to attack the Zionists. Let me read that again. Whittaker Chambers' memoir, Witness. Ronald Reagan said that this was his favorite book, or one of his favorite books. So the story goes. Quote, Arab outrages were occurring in Palestine. The Communist International chose that moment to call for the formation of a Soviet Arabistan and to attack the Zionists. Lastly, last quote for those of you who are confused, for those of you who don't know what the hell is going on, you think this is a game, you think that why do I care? Why should we care? Let me tell y'all, do y'all have any idea what the world was like before God revealed himself to the Jews? Do you have any idea? No, you don't. No, you don't. What a shame it would be. What a shame it would be if we, as humanity, I'm going to just come out and say it. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I've been called a golem, this and that. I'm surprised I haven't been called a Mossad agent by now. But if we lost, all Jews don't live in Israel, but if we lost Israel, or if we lost just a half of the world's Jewish population, what a colossal tragedy that would be for the human race. A tragedy. Just a tragedy. Not saying you, by any means necessary, do any and everything in order to. No, you have to be prudential and pragmatic when it comes to these things. But when you start to question the morality, it's like to go back to the Vietnam War. You can talk about mistakes that were made and how we prosecuted that war, but there is no debate on who had the moral high ground, the United States or the North Vietnamese. That is beyond debate. There is no question. There is no question who has the moral high ground in the Arab-Israeli conflict. No question. It is Israel. It's no question. You all are confused. I don't know what you're looking for. And you do so in the name of Christianity and conservatism. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed. Last quote, just to give you an idea. Again, this is not me. I'm not saying this. This is Yasser Arafat. In 1970, he was interviewed by an Italian reporter named Oriana Fallaci. Oriana Fallaci. Orianafallaaci. Here's what he said to Fallaci. Quote, this is the last thing I got for y'all. Quote, the question of borders doesn't interest us. From the Arab standpoint, we mustn't talk about borders. Palestine is nothing but a drop in an enormous ocean. Our nation is the Arabic nation that stretches from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea and beyond. The PLO is fighting Israel in the name of Pan-Arabism. What you call Jordan is nothing more than Palestine. They want the world. They want it all. You stupid motherfuckers. This ain't got nothing to do with no two-state goddamn solution. A two-state solution is a final solution. They want to eradicate them. And you. All unbelievers, all polytheists, all pagans, all Sabians, all unbelievers. You are to be punished in this life and the afterlife. Need I go back to the passages from the Quran that I read to you about 2 hours ago? Cowards, in order to appease that need to feel like a fucking hero, you choose the path of least resistance. Say whatever you want to say about Jews. They're no different from anyone else. But no, anything to feel like a hero. It can't be that. It can't be as bad as it is because it's too scary to contemplate that nearly 2 billion people want to destroy you, or at least a great percentage of that, a significant percentage of that 2 billion people want to destroy you. You can't fathom that. You don't understand that kind of hatred. You don't know what that means. You don't know what that feels like. You don't understand it. It got to be something else. It got to be we are doing something to them to make them feel this way. Benjamin Netanyahu, Mrs. Farmer says, is committing a holocaust. That broad has lost her damn mind. Lost. There's no holocaust. How? The cause is Pan-Arabism. If you want to kill the Palestinians, you got to kill them all. Israel isn't even capable of doing such a thing. There's too many Muslims. Nobody wants to eradicate Muslims. This is preposterous. Stupidity. Anybody else who thinks like her, stupidity. The man just told you what this is all about. They want the world. Praise be upon him. Praise be upon the prophet. And may the curse of Allah be upon you. That's it, man. Teach him Chuck. I'm out. I'll catch y'all next time. One.